Make no mistake, I'm a sociopath. God, that sounded evil. Let's rewind a little.
Most of the games I play are ones I get recommended in some capacity. I think this is the experience of most people. You're told through word of mouth, through reviews, or whatever that you should play this game. There are cases where games are found otherwise. Maybe you're a fan of the developer, maybe you saw the game at an expo and liked the demo they had, maybe you just got it pushed to you through your Steam queue and felt like going in cold. Further back, you may have gone to a Blockbuster and rented a game based off of the cover art. Before that, maybe a friend at work gave you a shareware disc for the first episode of Doom. I say this to lay out that most people know what a game is before going into it. They know the genre, the developers, the story, the graphics, something. For me, I went into this game knowing two things after seeing an out of context TikTok. I knew the name after digging through the comments for it, and I knew this.
He actually fucking shot me! What the fuck is wrong with you?
Maybe now you'll think twice about breaking the law.
You shot 5 bullets, so she'll think twice next time?
Hi, I'm some guy. Did you know that anime games could actually be about something? The visual novel series Class of '09 makes an argument for the existence of an evil society. Through the characterization of the secondary cast and Nicole's own monologue, the game explores the concept of evil as a character trait, both of the individual and of society, the corruptible nature of man, and the banality and insidious nature of evil. Backing up a bit, Class of '09 is a 2022 visual novel made by Max Field, known online as SBN3, and published by Wrath Club. It was followed up in 2023 by a standalone companion game, Class of '09 The Re-Up, which runs parallel to the first game, providing supplementary storylines and endings. These games follow Nicole, a high school student with a seemingly broken moral code. Throughout the various storylines and endings of these games, Class of '09 aims to show us how the rules of her society corrode the morals of those in it. Our goal in this discussion is to look deeply into this proposed reality and examine how our understanding of evil as a philosophical concept matches up to it. Before we go any further, we need to set some things up. First, we'll set some general expectations of the scope of this discussion, then we'll take a look at what visual novels even are as a medium, then we'll introduce some of the key characters. As far as scope is concerned, I'd like to first clarify that this is not a review of Class of '09. While I plan on highlighting the best qualities of the game, we'll be mainly focusing on textual analysis and less on gameplay execution. If you're looking for a review of the game, at $25 for both games in a bundle, Class of '09 provides incredible value at its price point. The highlights of these games are both the quality of the writing and the talent of the voice cast. For fans of visual novels and irreverent humor in the spirit of Mean Girls, Heathers, and old school YouTube comedy, these games are both an easy recommendation from me. Next, while I believe that a lot of the concepts and themes we'll discuss here were fully intended by the writers, this is very much a comedic game and we have no way of knowing the intent of the writers, if any. This is my interpretation of the text as I choose to understand it, and one perspective of looking at the game's themes. This is a fun thought experiment we're doing here, and if you got a completely different read from the game when you played it, that's totally fine. This is just me obsessively reading into the funny anime girls who swear at me.
Why would you upload videos to YouTube?
Lastly, these games have serious themes which they joke about regularly. While we plan on joking about them too, just know that we'll address the impact these ideas have in our analysis at the end. I'd like to take a moment now to discuss the gameplay of Class of '09 and visual novels as a genre. I acknowledge that some of you in the audience may not really know what a visual novel is. This is to be expected if you weren't cool in high school like the rest of us. Anime games and dating sims are categorically jock media, and you nerds wouldn't have been cool enough to play them at the time. So, like I said, Class of '09 is a visual novel, but what does that mean exactly? Well, a visual novel is a type of interactive fiction that diverts focus away from traditional gameplay mechanics and directs it towards narrative delivery and character development. The level of interaction in visual novels can vary greatly from game to game. Some games have more traditional gameplay systems with visual novel elements as a layer on top, and some games that YouTube won't let me show you are made to be played with one or fewer hands.
You jacked off to Jack and Daxter?
Class of '09 fits into a middle ground where most visual novels popular in the West sit. This type of game is structured like a choose-your-own-adventure book, where you watch the story unfold as a passive observer, every now and then being prompted to pick between a few selected story paths. This type of narrative design has several benefits. Much like the choose-your-own-adventure books they draw inspiration from, Games of this type pride themselves on a collection of different endings that are directed by the player's actions. Adventure-based visual novels can play out much like a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, where the success of your party over the villain relies on you making smart choices. Dating simulation games often take the form of visual novels, where the game's endings revolve around which eligible romantic interest you decide to infect with the human emotion of friendship. Class of '09 is no different than these examples, except instead of accomplishing some grand goal or getting your keyboard sticky, you're deciding whether you want the game to end with Nicole dead, Jekka in prison, or with Jeffrey becoming a school shooter. These are not our only options though. In fact, the first game of the series has 15 total endings, with a secret epilogue. The second game has fewer endings at only 7. This isn't due to lack of content though. The path to each of these endings takes considerably longer than the first game, with far less reused content. Another benefit you get from this type of storytelling is the ability to focus on the character's morals and the cause and effect loop. A fundamental tragedy in game narrative design is the fact that at the end of the day, a player will be the one dictating how the characters will behave on screen. Depending on the game, this could matter very little. Being on my best behavior in Overwatch won't magically make it a good game. For some games though, this can become an issue. I won't dwell on the concept of ludonarrative dissonance, but in short, it's cool that Spider-Man talks about not killing people in cutscenes, but that doesn't explain why he starts throwing thugs off of rooftops the second I get my sticky fingers on a controller. Many games opt for a silent protagonist for exactly this reason. It's hard to say what is and isn't out of character for the rookie in Far Cry 5 because, well, they aren't a character. By taking away that narrative pressure of maintaining a consistent character, the design team can allow for more player agency without the fear of undermining the story. In the space of visual novels though, player agency is often limited to only a few interaction points. Because of these restrictions on the player's influence on the story, visual novels are able to explore their character development more freely without the fear of narrative incongruence caused by the player's actions. Class of '09 uses this to its fullest advantage, because our only choices are limited to a predefined list created by the writers. We can consider all actions in the games ones that Nicole herself would choose to do. This will be useful when we discuss the different scenarios that the game shows us as Nicole. Her strong characterization will allow us to view the different endings of this game as equally canon to each other. Finishing up our introduction, let's take a look at who our players are. We won't be gauging if they qualify as evil people at this point. The judgment of their character will come after we analyze their actions in the narrative. For now, we're just looking at their basic character traits. To start with, this is Nicole. Nicole is our main character and a self-proclaimed sociopath. Her outward persona shows a lack of any care towards her classmates or individuals she interacts with outside of school. She maintains an air of cool guy, mean though. According to her self-narrated introduction, she will reliably make decisions in her interactions that are ultimately self-serving. We are going to view this proposed reality through her eyes. Next of our people of interest, this is Jekka. Jekka is a hot, popular, and generally uncaring person. She glides through life with very few aspirations, and because of this, chooses to be a passive participant throughout the narrative. As a contrast to Nicole, Jekka exists as a part of the system. We'll examine the implications of this later, but if we see Nicole as the embodiment of subversiveness in the narrative, Jekka embodies apathy. Where Nicole may hold certain parts of her moral code strongly, Jekka holds the morals of society in a fairly loose capacity. Because of this, she's much more pliable to the cultural forces around her. We'll see how she's much more easily influenced by these events than Nicole is. It's now time for my secret hot take of the video. Jekka is the main character of Class of '09. And no, I will not explain what I mean by that. Up next is Jeffrey. Weak-willed, horny, and a sucker for attention. Jeffrey is the clear audience surrogate. Jeffrey is helplessly bullied and another willful pawn of the system, whereas Jekka's personality is passive and uncaring about the situations around her. Jeffrey is a more active participant. Keep an eye on how we see Jeffrey's personality react to changes in comparison to Jekka's. And this is Kyler. There are other characters in the games, some of which may even be worth discussing. For now, though, this list of 4 will serve as a good foundation to start with. We're ready to start talking about the game itself now. For the purposes of this discussion, we will examine 4 endings across the 2 games and the choices that lead to these endings. From there, we will talk about the nature of what evil even means in the first place, and then we'll quickly muse on the implications of our findings to see if we can't get you guys out of here a little bit early today.
Susan B. Anthony or whoever the fuck got women this far, but I got it from here.
The problem of analyzing any narrative-based game is deciding how much of it to demonstrate directly. I don't want to show too much of the game, since the jokes and the delivery is 80% of the experience. By just recapping all of it, I'm robbing you of hearing the jokes in the proper context with the intended delivery. For that reason, I'm limiting the content I'll show here to just what's strictly necessary for the thesis we're analyzing. If you want to play the game, you have very few reasons not to. It's short, it's cheap, and RenP will run on a large YAM. Let's start with our first story, one that I like to call With all of our stories, we'll start our ways past the game's introduction. Whichever ending you're eligible for will largely depend on the option you pick on the second day of the game, whether you go to gym or photography class. Because of this, we'll be skipping over the content that happens on day 1. While it's relevant to provide characterization for the cast of characters, it's not necessary for this project, and I'd like to avoid just recapping the entire game for you guys. This branch will start with Nicole choosing to go to photography class. She arrives late and is asked to stay after class to help the teacher in the darkroom. Man, I just got hit with the wave of like obviously I know what the game is, but every time I get to this point in the script, it hits me a wave like, oh god, right, we have to actually talk about this. Okay. If you know anything about the game, it's that most of the teachers here come with some romantic proclivities.
Well, you see, Nicole, I didn't actually call you in for chemical cleaning. Needed you alone to ask something else.
Here it comes.
No. Mind out of the gutter, please.
Oh, great. A nice, wholesome teacher for once. You know, I like this guy.
It's just you had a very striking look. Positively pure.
Yeah, this will be a fun... Huh? What was that, man?
A bright mind to match your bright complexion.
Huh. Okay, Mr. White, but that was kinda...
This weekend, a nice, bright shoot should really cleanse our minds of the muddied culture surrounding us.
Yeah, okay, I see what's going on here. I'm gonna skip over most of the shit he says at this photo shoot because it all sucks, and we're going to have many chances to talk about his, ideas later on in the video.
Do you enjoy being white?
I mean, not sure how white I'll be after standing in the sun all day. So, I'm pretty sure the photography teacher's a white nationalist.
I said the tuna's good today, and you just replied with that.
Nicole talks about the weekend to Jekka and takes a moment to do my job for me.
I guess it fits. Mr. White's a white supremacist.
White nationalist.
Isn't it the same thing?
White supremacists assume white culture is the correct culture. White nationalists politicize that.
Oh, that makes sense.
Does it?
Am I racist if I say no?
Yes. Jekka decides to talk to him herself to see if she can get him to say any more racist shit. We have the option to go with her here, but this is where our paths diverge. For our other examples, we won't go through diverging pathways too much, but our potential endings here are all similar enough that I think it's worth looking through all of them for this branch. For now, we'll tell Jekka to talk to him on her own.
You're such a bitch.
How? Because I don't want to see a white nationalist more than I already have to?
Since Nicole's not going, let's see what she does instead.
Whatever, fine. See you after school?
Yeah, may as well. I actually have some counselor meeting for new student integration.
Ah, shit.
Oh, good luck with that.
Why are you saying it like that?
Well, this is as good a time as any to talk about him. You see, Nicole's counselor is,
See, Nicole, doesn't it just feel great to openly talk about sex in a safe environment?
he's
What's the next taboo to be lifted? Let's say if you and me dated outside of school.
Ugh.
Perhaps in our lifetime, a relationship with someone of my age and someone of yours wouldn't be so frowned upon.
He's upsettingly realistic.
Well, one last food for thought. Your driver's license may say you're still a girl, but your body knows you're a woman right now, prime for reproduction.
It's worth pointing out two of the choices you have as Nicole here. She can either redirect away from this interesting conversation, or she can challenge him on his shitty felonious worldview. It's worth noting that this choice has no impact on story direction. I've mapped out the story paths in this game for all the options, and this one just gives you different dialogue options in this scene without affecting the next scene. In mechanical terms, this is just a byproduct of how decision-based narrative games are designed. Not every choice can have massive narrative impact, and even if it could, that wouldn't necessarily lead to a better experience. In thematic and narrative terms, however, we can view this and situations like this as a demonstration of the futility of Nicole's situation. No matter what you choose here, there's no way to get the counselor fired in this path. Just for fun though, I'm going to play the clip of him getting arrested from a different path.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
No!
Alright, that makes me feel better.
He also threatened to kill me if I didn't have sex with him, so throw that somewhere in the charges.
Come with me.
Nicole meets back up with Jekka and they talk about her conversation with Mr. White. It went...
So I was talking to him, kind of confronting him, and his arguments weren't that out there.
It went well.
I don't get it. He's a political extremist. How is he not out there?
See, we said that, but he asked me why it's okay to do Black Pride and Mexican Pride, but not White Pride, and I really didn't have an answer for him.
Okay, maybe it's not going so well.
Mr. White kept telling me how pretty my skin was. I wasn't paying attention. What's an ethno state anyway?
We're given the option here to give into the racist sentiment or to let it go and pick another battle. Note that there's no option that allows us to challenge Jekka here. We'll talk about that at the end of this section. Either way though, Nicole still has a choice to make. Does she fall for Mr. White's brainwashing, or does she let it go? If Nicole agrees with Jekka's point of view, she'll be invited to come to another shoot with Jekka this weekend.
That's a good point. See you this weekend.
White power!
This brings us to our first ending. Nicole and Jekka show up to Mr. White's photo shoot to find out that they're not there to take pictures, but to rather help him manufacture chlorine bombs. Nicole claims to be unaware what they were for. Regardless of that though, when Mr. White detonates the bombs and gets killed in the blast, Nicole and Jekka's DNA is all that's left to pin the case on for the feds. I really don't have a ton to say about this fork of the ending. The only point I want to make is that Nicole and Mr. White are very similar in the sense that they're both rebelling against the systems at play around them. While the authority Nicole rallies around is systemic sexism and misogyny, Mr. White's is, I guess, like the existence of Puerto Rican people. In real life, this worldview presents itself as a reaction of the privileged class to a perceived loss of control. Mr. White sees the effects of social diversity as a threat to his way of life. By committing acts of terrorism, he believes he's reclaiming rights taken away from him by the larger authority. I don't say this to try to defend Mr. White or humanize his actions, but it's an example of our characters fighting against the system and losing. Again, this time the institution being fought against is literally racism is bad, but the point still stands. If you fight the status quo, you won't be rewarded for it. This sort of thinking is a recurring theme that we will discuss many times going forward. Over the next few days, we see some things begin to shift, mostly with everyone's favorite guy, Kyler. In Nicole's history class, he makes some classic zingers.
Thomas Jefferson?
Very good. One of the more interesting presidents of the 19th century for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, he had sex with slaves, gross.
Quiet down.
And then in gym class, we hear him complain about diversity programs at his lacrosse camp.
No, you don't understand. There's all these dumbass underprivileged student passes. They're doing so many that 20% of the sports are automatically filled. All these Mexican kids act like America's so racist when they got the fucking red carpet rolled out for everything.
An interesting thing to note about Kyler is that he's potentially a subtle subversion of his trope. In lots of high school-based media, the role Kyler fills is typically the star football player or the cheerleading captain, someone who gets away with their bad behavior because of their athletic skills. With Kyler, we don't actually ever hear about him playing lacrosse, and in other routes he talks about him having perks for his injuries. So I like to assume that he's this larger-than-life bully who mostly rides the bench and tore his ACL the second he got on the field. We could argue that this feeling of inferiority is what contributes to why he was so quick to fall into Mr. White's jingoism. No matter which option we pick here, Nicole doesn't really put up much of a fight, and the ultimate outcome doesn't change. We can try to defuse Kyler, but he stands by his principles.
Everyone in their fucking rap music now? Whatever happened to classic rock? Or country, like real music?
Thankfully, gym class ends and Nicole goes to...
But that's beside the point. Just get your grades up, Nicole.
Skipping it.
And also, if you could stop writing death to pedophiles on all the whiteboards, that would be great.
Moving on. In the hallway, Nicole runs into some of Jekka's comrades of the Celtic Cross. Crispin and Jeffrey. We didn't talk about Crispin. Crispin and Jeffrey explain how Jekka has spread Mr. White's philosophy to the rest of the school to form the White Pride Party. Nicole senses that Jeffrey may not be as committed to the cause as he claims, and that he's more using it as a pathway to acceptance from his peers, mirroring how real-world hate groups target lonely and vulnerable people for indoctrination. We have a chance here to see our last two endings. We either can choose to provoke the group further in order to get a video of their demonstrations, or we can attempt to sway Jeffrey away from the cause. Choosing to undermine the party's influence on Jeffrey, he immediately folds and agrees to bail on his duties to go on a date with Nicole.
Jeffrey, this might be sudden, but you want to take me out later?
Kill you? I couldn't do that, Nicole. Unless, of course, Mr. White told me to.
No, I mean, take me out on a date?
Date? You mean dinner and hugging and kissing?
Jekka comes by and confronts Jeffrey about his disloyalty. Showing a surprising amount of character, Jeffrey stands up to Jekka and tells her clearly that he only really joined because people were acting nice to him.
Now that Nicole's asking me out, well, having a girlfriend's way more important than the final solution.
Jekka, understanding the error of her ways, thanks Jeffrey for his insight and for opening her eyes to the blindness of
Aryan students,
Imperial Scribe Jekka!
how may we serve you? Jeffrey here is no longer our brother, and he must be eliminated.
No, never mind. I misread that. She actually orders for him to be executed on the spot. My mistake.
Are you actually just gonna have him killed right here?
Well, duh, but it's just politics,
Hanging out after school, Jekka lets Nicole know that Mr. White still talks about her a lot.
What was the last thing he asked?
He asked if Montana sounded like a good name for a death camp.
No, about me.
Always about you? Okay. Well, he wasn't really asking, just wondering aloud if your hair was too dark for you to bear racially pure children.
What the fuck?
I know. It's so obvious you dye it, right? Right.
In this ending, the FBI steps in and shuts down the whole school. Since 95% of the faculty and students were party members, they're all charged with the conspiracy and murder of Jeffrey. Much like Mr. White in the previous ending, we see punishment for going against the status quo, this time with Jeffrey. Before, we saw how rebellion against racial tolerance led to Mr. White's death and Nicole's incarceration. Now we're seeing the inverse on a more micro level. Within the school, nationalism is the new status quo, and Jeffrey's rebellion led to his execution at the hand of the de facto state. Nicole makes it out, but only due to the timely intervention of the feds into the school. Had they waited any longer, she'd have probably met a similar fate to Jeffrey. Our last line from Jekka even suggests that Nicole would likely become the next target due to her hair color. We'll talk about it in depth later when we revisit our character descriptions from earlier, but this ending is one of the strongest demonstrations of the corrupting nature of this society. Within a matter of weeks, Jekka goes from a relatively normal person to Imperial Scribe of the White Power Party. Let's see if we can turn things around though. What happens if instead of instigating with Jeffrey, we encourage the group for a demonstration?
Aryan brothers, assemble!
Yo, we doing the chant?
Hell yeah, we're doing the chant.
Jeffrey asks Nicole if she wants to join after filming their chanting, and she says that she has to mull it over. That night, Jesus, Nicole, clean your room. That night, Nicole posts the video she took to the Nation of Islam forums. This catches their attention and they order an arson attack on the school. Nicole sees this coming beforehand and avoids school that day. The outcome isn't any better for Jeffrey. I chose this trio of endings to show how quickly our main cast can turn into monsters. This is a concept we'll discuss heavily in Chapter 2. I could talk about real-world examples of hate groups like this infiltrating schools, but I think that's a topic that deserves a much more thorough, serious, and qualified discussion than I'm prepared to give right now. So instead, I want to go back to earlier in this route where Nicole has the chance to accept Mr. White's philosophy or to ignore it and not challenge Jekka on it. We have seen and will continue to see Nicole stand up for what she believes are important issues and non-negotiable differences. But here, we don't get an option to stand up to those ideas of white supremacy. I think there are a lot of different ways to read this, but in my opinion, I just don't think this is an issue Nicole cares much about. Throughout the game, we see her employ a very hands-off approach to most things that don't directly benefit or impact her. Even when it comes to bullying Jeffrey, she will never step in to stop it herself, but she'll oftentimes steer the situation to where someone else, usually Kyler, takes over for her. If I were to armchair psychoanalyze this characteristic of hers, I would say it may have to do with the distinct lack of control in her personal environment. Sure, while she's in school, she's able to command a great deal of power and control. Once her greater problems leave the realm of school, though, we see repeatedly in the game that she's ultimately powerless to affect any change or put up resistance to the powers that be. We see this in endings where she gets kicked out of her house, expelled from school, and institutionalized. But we also see it in the very start of every new playthrough. Shit. Okay, we skipped over Nicole's mom in the section earlier too, but she's actually kind of important, so we're going to cover her for a little bit. A running gag in all storylines is that Nicole's mom has been married 8 times. This caused Nicole to move around a lot as a child. Research into the development of children who relocate frequently shows a strong link to slowed development and behavioral problems. In a 1995 study, kids who relocated frequently were found to be up to 77% more likely to develop 4 or more behavioral issues and 33% more likely to repeat a grade. The authors point out that the data does not show a link to the development of a learning disorder. Ruling out a pathological cause for stunted development, this study suggests moving in itself is the cause for slowed growth in these children. For Nicole, we can see how these behaviors have manifested. The study categorizes children as frequent movers when they have had more than 6 moves in their childhood. As Nicole moved with each of her mom's marriages, she would safely fall into this category. She's rebellious against authority figures because she knows she can't rely on them for stability. Nicole calls out the things she sees as unfair in the system because she sees it as a threat to her only source of control, her reputation in school among her peers. But why won't she call out Jekka here? If she's so outspoken on unfairness, like we said, why won't she fight Jekka on this? Well, I think it's because things are more complicated than that. We all want to believe that we're paragons of moral consistency, that our moral codes are so solid and unbending that we're free to judge others based on their moral inconsistencies. I think the answer to why Nicole doesn't fight Jekka here is that she likes Jekka. Jekka's her friend, and she's worried about ruining that.
You know what? Forget it. Just do what you want. I'd rather have a white nationalist lunch friend than no friend at all.
She doesn't care if the pedophile counselor, Mr. White, or even Principal Lynn dislike her, but she cherishes her friendship with Jekka and wouldn't want to ruin that. I think the important takeaway from this interaction is that we're seeing the first hints from the narrative at how Nicole expresses her own agency subversively despite how those in power would like her to behave. She's able to pick and choose her battles here in ways we don't see other characters do. Without even prompting us for a choice, Nicole repeatedly tries to educate Jekka on what exactly Mr. White's goals are. she tries to keep her away from it, but she also cares enough to not blow her friendship over it either. That indifference is how this hatred was able to spread, and how Nicole was able to get away unscathed. Like I said, when she played by the rules here, she managed to get out cleanly. There's a lot that happens off screen, so we can't say for sure how things went down, but a school doesn't magically get taken over by a supremacist group without help. To extrapolate from what the text is suggesting here, this school was already primed to be a breeding ground for this sort of thing. Mr. White is in a position of power and is given free access to be alone with children with no other supervision or oversight. The counselor is preoccupied with his own harmful agenda and is unwilling to assist the students who may be struggling with the ideas Mr. White is putting out, while the principal is nowhere to be seen in this branch. The students are being fed racist rhetoric at a time when they're just coming into an understanding of how the wider world works. They're told that the diversity programs at camp are unfair by trusted adults, and they hold that anger with them. The system may be on Nicole's side, but it also paved a huge path for this sort of thing to spread like the clap. The gears of the machine in this story worked as a catalyst to spread hatred and fear. That's all I have to say about this branch of the story, but I have one more thread that I want to bring up for our character discussions later. Back at the start of this path, we can choose for Nicole to go with Jekka to see Mr. White, or to go see the counselor. Picking to go with her doesn't lead to a unique ending on this branch, but rather pushes you to one of the game's default paths. If you choose to go with Jekka, the two of you confront Mr. White about his beliefs together. This time, with Nicole as backup, Jekka is resilient in the face of his messaging and leaves indignant. This both supports our claims about Jekka's moral pliability from earlier, and would also suggest that she sees Nicole as an ideologically stronger personality in this discussion. Mr. White threatens that there's nothing they can do to hurt him or his position, which Jekka challenges by going to see the principal, Miss Lynn.
How can I help you girls?
It's about Mr. White and photography. He's kind of...
Stop. I get this conversation once a year.
You've known about this?
Charitably, and to end the section without getting more sidetracked, I'll say that Principal Lynn is unhelpful to the girls here.
It's sick.
I'd be inclined to agree. Another level of twisted, but he's made very strong cases for covering himself in peanut butter to pose for the students, so I'd rather not push the issue further.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Oh, this isn't about that?
We're going to see a lot more of her as the game goes on.
For a claim like that, you'd need pretty hard evidence to get him removed from the faculty entirely. Also, he may or may not have rather compromising photographs of me, so I'd rather not get involved.
He may or may not have pictures of you in neo-Nazi shirts, 'cause I may or may not have been there.
Actually, I may or may not have been covered in baby oil.
Well, that was pretty heavy. I'm sorry to bring the mood down like this, but it wouldn't be thorough if we didn't really dig into the subject matter. We'll bring things back up with our second story, which is the ever lighthearted tale of... This story starts with Nicole choosing to go to gym class instead of photography. The gym teacher has the kids in a lineup, giving them a strict speech, setting expectations, running drills, explaining the rules. Do I even have to ask?
You know something? You're feisty. I like that in my female students.
Cool, thanks. I love it here.
You are saying this to a 16-year-old in the girls' locker room.
Come on, what's age?
Thankfully, we're pretty much going to ignore him for this route. If you're super interested to know what his deal is, you'll be happy to know that he features more significantly in our next story. Now, instead, we're going to sit out for this class, because fuck gym, am I right, fellas? Okay. Nicole gets sat down next to Jeffrey, who you're guaranteed to have already met in one of the intro scenes we skipped over. See? Told you it was important. Buy the game. It goes on sale a lot.
So, gym class. Showing our education system is pure evil.
Why do you talk like a cartoon?
As you can see, Nicole and my guy Jeffrey are absolutely hitting it off.
Have you ever watched television for adults?
What? Do you mean like porn?
No, just normal. Never mind.
Huh. because I like some wild porn here and there.
Okay, so I may have buried the lead there in the introduction I gave him. Jeffrey's not a very sympathetic guy, to the point where I'd go as far as to say he's the kind of guy I would have hung out with in high school. We could go into a whole discussion on why what he said is bad. I could talk about porn addiction and how it affects kids. Honestly though, you don't need a forklift certification to know that this is weird kid behavior. If there are any Jeffreys watching, don't do this shit. Nicole's gonna play it off here, but in reality, you're gonna get punched in the nuts and suspended for it. But, as Nicole, we are sitting next to Jeffrey, and we have the choice to either give him a reality check or to goad him into telling us more about his hobbies. Thankfully, this branch of the story is fairly linear, so we only have one path towards an ending. To summarize, if Nicole tells him off, then he gets mad and Kyler kicks the shit out of him like normal. The story then jumps to another default branch. If you're just dying to know what this guy likes jerking off to, we can have Nicole straight up ask him.
Well, are you gonna tell me or not?
Why do you want to know?
Everybody knows the coolest guys have depraved fetishes. Have you been on the internet?
So now we have a lunch date with Jeffrey, where my guy's gonna let us in on all the best smut that 2008 has to offer.
Awesome. Finally, someone to share my escapism with.
Escapism?
Yeah, I get lost in all these weird websites to get away from my gun nut stepdad. I think he was in Iraq or something.
I'm sure that won't come up later.
A house full of depraved porn and firearms. What could possibly go wrong?
I wanted to do a bit here where I had a bunch of porn and guns behind me, but then I remembered that I'm filming this in the school and uploading it to YouTube. So, that bit's going in the scrap bin. At lunch, Jeffrey starts off real smooth, describing his dream girl to us.
So you like him how much taller than you exactly?
At least like 12 feet taller, preferably 50. I want to be picked up with only 2 of her fingers.
Okay, I really need you guys to hear me out on this one. Sometimes we'll cut their conversation here.
Did I mention how I liked girls with cat ears and tails?
The next day, we see a rare moment in these games where we're alone without Nicole. Jeffrey is heading to the library for totally normal reasons when he runs into Jekka. She starts harassing him and lets it slip that Nicole has told everyone in the school about his fetishes.
Aw, you're mean. You don't like me anymore.
Again, I'm sorry, I just don't know.
Maybe I should grow 40 feet. Then you'd really like me.
Hey, how'd you...
We cut to a few weeks later where for some reason Principal Lin is addressing the class.
I've heard the rumors going around about him, and you should all be ashamed of yourselves.
Ugh, thank God. She's here to put a stop to the rumors. She led us down the last path, but I'm glad that she's...
Just because he prefers alternative forms of sexual intercourse does not mean he should be ridiculed.
Oh, no. Oh, she's not gonna...
Jeffrey here prefers to be stepped on by women who look like cats, as opposed to standard intercourse with a human woman.
I don't want to do the video anymore, man. Jeffrey stops Nicole after everyone leaves class and in another rare moment, plainly calls Nicole out on her behavior.
Do you even care? Do the results of your actions mean anything to you?
Yeah, when they affect me, sure.
We're given another choice here. She can either apologize and try to prevent him from harming himself, or she can stand her ground and defend what she did.
I'm sorry, did you think I have any form of emotional attachment to you?
Why else would you have talked to me in the first place? Why would you have lunch with someone you don't like?
It was funny. I knew you'd say some embarrassing shit.
So you used me. You were a new student trying to look cool, so you just used me.
No shit. In what world does a girl like me take interest in you? If you're that fucking stupid, maybe you should kill yourself.
Fine. I'll give you your satisfaction. But not before getting mine first. You're the only girl I ever loved, even if it wasn't real.
You knew me for 2 days. Bye.
It's pretty clear what happens from here. In the ending monologue, Nicole remarks on what she believes will be the coverage of this event after her death, how both her and Jeffrey will be twisted into caricatures of themselves. I don't think I have to explain my reasoning for why I chose to talk about this ending. Through the constant torment of his environment, Jeffrey was driven to the point of committing a mass shooting. I want to tread lightly here. In real-world parallels to this ending, there's rarely a single event or characteristic that we can point to and say, that's it. Had it not been for this one thing, none of this would have happened. Like all things, though, it's always more complicated than that. In the aftermath of tragedies like this, it's a common reaction to find the scapegoat. What one thing can we do to prevent this from happening ever again? But there's rarely just one thing to fix. These sorts of cases have lots of overlapping and intersecting causes, some that you can fix, and some that might not even have a practical solution, like bullying. This kind of immediate reaction often does more harm than good. By focusing a solution on one bully, one bad home life, one bad school, we lose sight of the wider web of contributing factors that will undoubtedly cause something like this to happen again. However, unlike in reality, this game gives us the opportunity to see what he would have done otherwise. We see him graduate valedictorian. We see him disappear into the background, and we see him fall in line with the rest of his classmates in joining the White Pride Party. We even see him murdered by this party for standing up against their beliefs. Hell, we can see what happens if Nicole doesn't push him further in this one choice. If we choose to apologize, we can convince him that this doesn't matter, that people were going to assume he jerked off to weird shit anyway, and that he should just own it. This one conversation resolves the issue fully, ending in him seemingly no longer troubled and no longer thinking of harming anyone, himself included. No, unfortunately, we can attribute this course of events to Nicole and Nicole alone. There's an interesting parallel here with the opening sequence with Nicole's father. Before moving to her new town, Nicole's father kills himself in front of her.
I said, fuck you, I'm living with Dad. He's just a neighborhood down. I put the boxes down, go over, knock on the door, and boom! A gunshot! My second Christmas killed himself! I walked in. Floor looked like a whole-ass video game, just blood everywhere. And get this, his suicide note was stuck to the fridge with a Cookie Monster magnet. All he wrote on it, Nicole's fault. I'm Nicole, by the way, hi. What the fuck did I do to him?
We don't know the specifics of what led up to this event, and it's mostly played for laughs and to set Nicole up as the sociopath she presents herself as. Because of this, we can't really use it as evidence of anything, but we can speculate that this may be similar to our story here with Jeffrey. Maybe there was one bad choice that she could have picked different to prevent it. There's no way of knowing. Astute viewers who have been paying attention to our themes that we've collected here will notice that once again, we see rewards and punishments given out for conformity and rebellion from society. Obviously, it ends with Nicole and Jeffrey dead. However, that wasn't the work of the system. Here, we see Jeffrey snap and take what he believes to be a final stand against the system. In this case, he views the system as the institution that allows and encourages his unfair and cruel treatment. Unlike our other example, Nicole takes the role of the instigator here. She becomes the system for Jeffrey and is the one rebelled against. Looking at what we see in the game itself, she has seemingly no punishment for her actions. On the contrary, looking at her monologue at the end, she predicts how the media will frame her as completely innocent and without blame, while he'll be framed as a twisted mastermind. The gears of the machine worked in this story to maximize misery for this one individual. By the way, if you were to make a case for any of these endings being the canon ending, it would be this one because it's the one in the anime.
Is that...
Jeffrey snapped! We gotta get out of here!
That's about it for this ending. I won't do the same joke again with the fake lead-in. This next one's just as bad. Our next story is likely the first ending that a lot of players will encounter. You may have noticed in the last few sections that I refer to default branches that certain choices will redirect you to. To break down what I mean, let's take a look at this fancy flowchart I made. Ooh. According to all my playthroughs and testing, this is the full map of every decision in the original Class of '09. Green and white squares are specific choice screens. The two yellow squares are where the day one decisions converge, and the red squares are different endings. We also have two blue ones, which are what I'm referring to as the default branches. These are storylines that players will be directed to if the choices they make don't progress towards a specific ending. Let's use the previous story we looked at along with our flowchart to explain what I mean by this. Starting from selecting to go to gym, we can choose to change or sit out. If we choose to sit out with Jeffrey, we start our conversation about his hentai proclivities. Continuing to goad him into telling us leads to the same classroom scene from earlier. If instead of calling his bluff, we choose to apologize and defuse the situation, then we can functionally escape this branch of the story. Because Jeffrey never goes through with killing himself or Nicole, the story continues as if it never happened. This serves both a narrative and mechanical function in the game. By having default routes and escape options, it allows the creators to include more choices in dialogue than if every single choice combination needed its own discrete storyline. This contributes to the flowchart looking as messy and complicated as this one does. It's even more apparent when we compare it to the flowchart for the re-up. As you see, there are no default routes here, and instead just a day 2 convergence like in the original game. This is because the number of choices and potential endings were significantly reduced to allow for longer individual branches with more scenes included between decisions. For example, to reach an early ending in the original game may take about 20 minutes, whereas all the endings in the re-up will take 45 minutes to an hour. The re-up also has more day 1 possibilities, which, while not being endings themselves, serve as miniature branches with their own contained stories as well. So with all that being said, we're going to start our third story on this exact default route we mentioned. An interesting quirk of these default routes is that there's no direct way to get to them from gym or photography like the others. The only way to enter this plotline is through escaping others. The opening for this arc has Nicole in her bedroom making a depression playlist, which is the most 2000s high school thing you could possibly do. Her mom comes in asking why she seems so exhausted.
People, Mom.
You're being nice, right? Trying to get along?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's my problem. Never putting up a fight. Never telling men I'm not their emotional wheelchair.
If you play this game a bunch of times to see different or specific endings, this is a scene that will jump scare you a lot if you're not using a guide. It can feel like a failure state in that you either know you made a mistake in your choices and have to go back, or your choices haven't led to a new story thread you haven't seen yet. I'd like to point out that there's a theme to the different choices that will put you on this path. When Nicole opts to be kind, non-confrontational, or reluctantly apologetic in her choices, they typically escape onto this branch. While the events of the previous branches we escaped aren't always relevant on the default paths, the methods in which we escaped are. This is the branch where Nicole tries to play by all the rules of the system. Again, because of that, I think most players will see this ending on their first attempt in a blind playthrough. People generally don't behave the way Nicole does, and her placating choices are typically even more aggressive and mean than what an average person would ever do. A player not used to the harshness of this proposed world will likely pick the answers which led down this path. And again, while a lot of what we're arguing here is up to interpretation, I personally believe that this decision was intentional from the creators. Resuming their conversation though, Nicole explains that despite trying her best to please everyone, all she can see around her are predators and opportunists. Her mom tries to give her some advice.
Well, sweetie, I'm not sure if being confrontational is the key to happiness. You're a beautiful girl. Don't have an ugly personality towards anyone.
So I should, spread myself thin so anyone can have a place in my life?
Don't put it so negatively. All I'm saying is, be inclusive. Give people a chance.
What if they're bad people?
I don't believe in anyone being inherently bad.
Yeah, I guess the pedophiles trying to abduct me on MySpace are just misunderstood.
Always a negative spin. Just promise you'll try. Try to be nice and make time for people.
We're going to talk about her mom some more later, but this interaction gives us some really useful insight into her perspective on how she approaches interpersonal relationships. Like we mentioned before, Nicole's mom has been married 8 times. If her advice to Nicole is to be more open and inviting to people, it's a fair assumption to make that she applies this herself in practice in her romantic relationships. Nicole concedes agreeing to be nice to people despite already feeling too spread thin.
I promise it'll pay off.
I'll be your enabling little princess.
Months later, we see Nicole updating Jekka on how she spent her spring break.
But whatever, now my mom's addicted to heroin again. How was your spring break?
Exhausting? I thought everyone would just forget about the hangout promises I made over the winter.
Nicole is exhausted and is at the point where she's overcommitted to saying yes to everyone's requests, regardless of if she wants to hang out with them at all.
Being nice just traps you into these hostage friendships. Socializing honestly kind of sucks now.
Jekka tells her to be more assertive and to
tell him to fuck off.
Yeah, Jekka, relax, I'm getting there. Nicole explains that she feels trapped by her niceness and that breaking the cycle would put her in danger, seemingly an overreaction to an outside observer, but tragically understandable to someone familiar with the rules of this environment.
I can't. I feel like I'm at a point of no return. If I try to escape now, he'll just stalk me.
Don't be so cynical. We'll probably just murder you.
Later on, we see Nicole hanging out with Crispin in her living room. Look, I know we haven't introduced him much despite popping up multiple times now, but this video is too long already, and I promise that there's almost nothing to Crispin's character other than that Nicole fucking hates him.
So this is your place, huh?
That's the 3rd time you said that.
Sorry, yeah, today's just been wild, crazy.
That's the 4th time you said that.
Honestly, this section is going to get bogged down if I recap the whole thing. The point of these dates is to show how mind-numbingly boring they are and how close to torture they are for Nicole.
You kind of remind me of this one girl from a local punk band around here. She kind of gets standoffish too.
I'm standoffish?
Yes. Along with this date with Crispin, she also goes on ones with Kyler and Jeffrey.
Do you know why it's so hard to find animators?
I don't know why the fuck I'm here. I even had to pay for my own shitty cheeseburger.
Yeah, Nicole's really going through it.
But yeah, Kelly's a fucking whore and I hope she dies. End of discussion.
I'm not opposed to that stance. How about you, Nicole? Nicole?
Huh? Oh, sorry. I'm exhausted somehow.
We're seeing the insidious repercussions of the advice Nicole's mom gave her earlier. Even in the real world, women face lopsided expectations of being outgoing and personable, while at the same time being timid and submissive. This is part of that intersectionality thing that your dad keeps getting confused about. Going beyond that though, I've been playing coy, but it's very clear to us and to Nicole that these guys are not interested in her as a person or as a friend, and are only looking to hook up.
Your taste in music, it's like nothing I've ever heard before. You really know your stuff.
No, I don't. I had Sean Kingston on for the last hour.
Humble too? Like, you're different.
I'm not having sex with you.
Whoa, what are you talking about?
Because of the expectations of her gender role, she's afraid to reject these invitations out despite her utter contempt for everyone involved and, well, everyone in general. She's stuck in a place where she's being treated as a literal sex object. She's living the very real circumstances of every woman in a technical major during undergrad. Lots of dudes wanting to be friends, but not exactly wanting to be your friend. I'd love to talk more about this because I think it's a serious problem that a lot of women face regularly, but I'm not the right person to be talking about it as it's not really something I've experienced myself. Instead, I'd like to direct you guys to an interview on the Healthy Gamer channel with the Twitch streamer Anita. In this interview, she and Dr. K discuss the nature of the friend zone and the ways which these sorts of relationships are equally as distressing for the unreciprocated side as they are for the side that feels rejected. In short, when faced with this sort of love confession from a guy, the woman on the receiving end is put in a terrible situation. She now has to reckon with not only rejecting someone, which sucks, but also the grief of losing a friend in the process. While she's the one serving the rejection, she was rejected first as a friend by him. Obviously, the reverse can happen too, and it's certainly applicable to queer relationships as well, but realistically, women are the most likely to face the specific issue from straight men. In this case, though, we see Nicole's in a different situation. Women as a monolith are not sociopathic monsters, and for the most part, actually enjoy being friends with people. For Nicole, though, she's less concerned with losing friendships and more concerned with literal assault and harassment. This is seriously affecting her mental health, which luckily she's able to vent about to her friends.
Are you suicidal?
Oh my god, don't just ask that.
Seriously, though?
Yes, very.
Yeah, me too.
Same.
This leads to the greatest decision screen I've ever seen in a video game. You cannot tell me that there's a combination of choices in a published game that gives you the same kind of comedic whiplash. This screenshot deserves to be in the fucking Met Gala. The Met Gala, I'm an idiot. This screenshot deserves to be in the fucking Met. Right now, we're going to choose to go to the concert. Surprisingly, in the section titled Nicole Dies, picking the option to kill yourself is not the deadly choice of the two. If you want to see the hilarious hijinks that come with this teenage suicide attempt, you'll have to play the game yourself. Instead, we meet up with Crispin again, and oh look, it's everyone's favorite character, the gym teacher.
Mr. Colby, what are you doing here?
I work here.
Oh, I guess you had to find a new job after the school board fired you.
What are you talking about? Fired? I left, moved on to bigger and better things.
Funny enough, while there's very little continuity between storylines in this game, one of the most consistent story beats across branches and even between games is the gym teacher getting fired. I like to think that in a sea of predators and supremacists, this guy was just too much for them to deal with, and it's a canon event for him, I guess.
You know, I'd love to chill in the back seat with a registered sex offender, but I might miss the next shitty band, so...
Come on, Nicole. None of these high school boys are at this level.
The coach is very clearly intoxicated and does his best to, put the moves on this 17-year-old girl. She just played fucking Fortnite or something, dog. Nicole turns him down, and for the first time in the game, we have a genuine show of remorse from one of these teachers where they step back and acknowledge the harm they've done in an act of supreme self-reflection.
Fine! You think I don't have any pull now that I'm not your gym teacher, but think again! My players love me, and they all keep in touch.
Nah, I'm just fucking with you. He threatens violence against this literal child because she rejected his sexual advances.
Are you threatening me?
I didn't do anything. Yet.
Now, things like this rarely rear their heads quickly. For people who are in Nicole's situations, part of the fear is not knowing when the shoe drops. It could be weeks, or months, or even...
You fucking whore!
Ah, okay, it'll be the next day. Thanks, Kyler.
I don't get it. Is this for YouTube or something?
Yes.
You fucked the whole football team!
No, I didn't. Wait, even if I did, why do you care? We weren't even together. Fuck off.
All those times I took you out, and you had the nerve to have sex with everyone but me!
Yeah, me too.
If I knew you were easy, I would have tried more when I took you out.
So, now we're in trouble. Nicole tried to be nice. She said yes to people, and she let them in. But the buck had to stop somewhere, and now her compliance is used against her once she's no longer playing the game. We have the choice of who we want to seek help from here. We can go home to Nicole's mom, or we can go to the counselor. I am making an editorial choice here and omitting the option of going to the counselor. It's valuable for the discussion and supports the overall theme, but I'm just so sick of this guy, and you can almost certainly imagine the sorts of things he says.
Are we being a tease, Nicole?
And you're actually employed here?
No. Instead, we're going to talk to Nicole's mom. If there's anyone in the world who should be willing to help Nicole here, it should be her mother. This type of behavior is unacceptable, but also strikingly common in real-world schools. Every school has these kinds of rumors, and they never turn out well for the victim. I'm sure you've already guessed, though, that it doesn't really matter. Whatever choice you make here, the ending is the same. I'm just going to play out the rest of the sequence through the ending. It's long, but we're going to have a lot to talk about after.
Yes, hello? Oh, hey, you. Oh no, what is it? Are you serious? I guess I'll have a word, yeah.
Mom, we gotta talk.
Shh! Yeah, of course. My daughter just walked in. Okay, see you soon. Bye, sexy. I was just on the phone with your school.
Who at my school are you calling sexy?
Your principal. Why are you skipping school?
Mom, you don't understand. Like 10 guys were about to jump me over a rumor. I had to split out of there.
I don't care if it was 20 guys. They're considering expulsion for all the times you skipped. I told you not to screw up here.
Mom, I can't help it if the pedophile gym teacher is trying to sabotage me.
This is the first I've heard of any gym teacher.
I told you about it 3 times. You would have remembered if you weren't always fucked up on Vicodin.
That's it. That's it. You're going back to that school whether you like it or not. If they expel you from there, you're expelled from this home.
Fuck this, I'm done.
Good. Lock yourself in your room. It'll be the last time you're seeing it.
You got that right. People are books, puzzles, and pawns. In that order. First they're read, then they're figured out, then they're persuaded. Some would call that wrongly manipulative. But what's the alternative? Basically any advice my mom's ever given me? Don't be mean, don't judge, be open. And yeah, sure, but that only works when men don't want to have sex with you. Be tolerant of guys who get off by choking you. No way that goes south. What's wrong with a pizza delivery boy with no career goals? When's the last time you asked your pizza man if he's a rapist? They're called warning signs, but ignoring them makes you a nice person. And one day, if you're a nice enough girl, you'll end up just like me. And just like my dad. If you're reading this, I'm dead.
There are a lot of people who failed Nicole here. Primarily her mother, but also the school, the police, her friends, bystanders, everyone around her. You can't stop rumors from spreading, and they were coming from a deeply twisted man. But the problems didn't start with the rumor. They started far before the concert. They started when Nicole's mom wouldn't listen and refused to understand the forces at play in Nicole's world. There are a lot of ways you could read Nicole's mom's actions. For me, I see her as the future version of Nicole were she to obliviously follow the status quo. The role she fills is the same role prepared for Nicole when she graduates from the machine, when it stops working on her and she starts working for it. There is no helpful adult in this series. They all function as agents of the system, and Nicole's mom is an indication of what the system has in mind for people who don't fight it. The people who helplessly accept the plans it has for them. She accepts that she knows it's messed up, but ultimately she conforms and pushes Nicole into conformity as well. She tells her to open up, that she needs to be less negative and be nicer to the people around her. When Nicole comes to her with a real problem and looks for an escape, she's unable to help. She rigidly pushes back, unwilling to cause any friction in what she sees as the natural order. Nicole sees through this. She understands that she's been written off as a loss by her society, so she does the one thing she can. She ends her life. The only real way to get one up on the machine is to give the man the bird and to say no to their plans. Tragically though, this is no victory. Regardless of the devastating nature of her suicide, she hasn't really won here. She was already cast out. The zeitgeist looked at her and deemed she was too problematic. There was no going back for her. Initially, this is where I ended the section. Nicole's dead, nobody cared, let's move on. Fortunately, okay, maybe not fortunately, you'll see in a second. I spent a long time writing this, mostly spent doing research, revising the contents, talking to experts, getting feedback, all the things that make the writing process drag out and out, extracting the fruit of my analytical mind, putting black ink to paper, jotting down my unmeasurable intellect out of a sea of consciousness, truly reinventing the wheel with each stroke of the pen, each press of the key. But in the time this has taken me, a whole new game came out. Not only that, but our secret main character is the actual main character of it. Let's take a quick look at the content of this new exciting chapter. Will we see some of the inner workings of Jekka's mind? Will her oh so rambunctious mother make an appearance? Is this finally going to be the dark, serious turn that this series seems destined for?
Could you put one of your socks back on?
I thought you guys liked bare feet.
We do, but sometimes a socked foot can be as cute as a bare foot.
Socks is extra.
Oh, it's a multiple hours long foot fetish joke? I guess that's cool too. I want to take a moment to dunk on the haters here for a second. I've done my best to keep the real life forces surrounding these games out of the discussion. There is endless discourse to be had about Max as a person, his history online, the content and appropriateness of his games as art, the messaging the games put out, his fan base, whatever. I don't think a lot of the discourse is overly relevant here, and most of it is counterproductive online pilled brain rot from X the Everything app. I do want to address the aggregate Steam review status though, because it's worth bringing up in a video where I'm so heavily recommending all of these games and totally not reviewing them. At the time of writing, while the other games sit at overwhelmingly positive for aggregate scores, the flip side has the dreaded mixed status. Reading the reviews, there are 4 complaints that are most common. The first complaint is over the length of the experience. While the re-up ended up being largely similar in length to the base game, the flip side is notably shorter. This is a valid complaint in comparison to the other games. However, as a standalone experience, I still think that the amount of entertainment you get for the price point is worth the cost of admission, if not pushing the line just a little bit. The second complaint is about the Flanderization of these characters and how they've been boiled down to near catchphrase machines. I'm going to skip addressing that for now and highlight the third complaint that nobody in the game is behaving in character. Characters are acting to extremes that don't follow their base character traits at all. In case you missed it right there, those 2 complaints contradict each other. You guys don't know what you want at all, do you? The last complaint is about the feet stuff. We're going to ignore the feet stuff. I want to point this out by saying that while yes, I would say this game has some of the weakest moments in the series, it also has some of the strongest thematically and some of the biggest twists we haven't seen yet. We're going to talk about some of the strong points here, but I want to reiterate again that I want you all to go out and play these games for yourself. It may feel like I'm hitting all the important beats from your perspective, but I'm only covering about half of the first game, none of the second game, and like 3 scenes from the third game. There's a ton more content in the series to experience for yourselves if you've enjoyed it so far. And if you're this far into the video, you're clearly either enjoying it or sleeping. I want to say though that relative to how the rest of the stories here are told, there are some pretty big reveals here that are best experienced blind. It's hard to say that Class of 09 can spoil itself, but there are some scenes here that recontextualize the first game in a way that the re-up never did. We're going to ruin those scenes by just addressing them up front, so if you have any desire to play these games, go through them yourself without the spoilers here. Now, on to the podiatry.
Oh, you girls spoiling me so good. I knew things would get better after high school.
Jeffrey, just focus on feet, not the society around them, okay?
I won't spend too much time recapping the story here because this one's pretty long. The main thing to call out here early is that this decision tree we're on is the opposite perspective of the suicide branch we just witnessed with Nicole. We see Jekka's perspective of it and what she was up to in the meantime. It's notable that Jekka is fairly absent during this branch in the first game. She's in a few scenes, but we don't really see her step in and help Nicole through what she's dealing with. Before this last game came out, this was ignorable as a quirk of the writing, but in this game, we see why she was so absent. Jumping into it, let's really quickly take a look at the introduction to get an idea of what the tone of this game will be.
I've seen a lot being friends with Nicole. Statutory teachers, pedophile counselors, white nationalists. One guy even killed his mom for me. I mean, I'd kill my mom for me as much as the next guy, but geez, no matter what she did, it would just leave the people closest to me dead or traumatized.
So, I guess Jekka is aware of all the different timelines and everything that's happened. Huh. Anyways, in this branch, Jekka's in a predicament. Through events somewhat out of her control, but also somewhat due to her past actions, she's forced into a situation where she has to date her history teacher or risk failing the year. This wouldn't be such a dilemma if it weren't for Jekka's dad. Normally, she'd choose to just fail history and deal with the consequences. But her dad's, well, just watch.
I know. I said you wouldn't need to, but...
She's the one divorcing you. Don't take it out on me.
I swear if you don't shut the fuck up, I will throw your ass out on the street!
Okay, Dad.
How about I knock a tooth out every time you act like your bitch whore mother? Think I give a fuck we paid for braces?
Right, fine, I'll get a job. Shit!
I really don't want to talk about her dad much because I just don't think you'd get anything new out of it. He's another example of exactly what we've been talking about this whole time when it comes to adults. He's just the violent extreme of it. I also don't want to talk about it because honestly, it just seems like his extreme mood swings are mostly played for laughs and the joke just doesn't really land for me. I'm not pearl clutching at this or anything. The content of what he's saying isn't too shocking compared to the rest of the series. I just don't think that this was the best way to use this character, and can't believe I'm saying this, but I think there were much funnier ways you could have demonstrated child abuse in this game. What is important to talk about, though, is how he uses these threats of violence against Jekka if she fails history. I won't show many clips from her interactions with her teacher because they're gross and the individual dates and talks they have aren't super relevant. Here's a quick sampling of it, though.
How do we get my test regraded?
I just have to go into the program and change the numbers.
No, I meant like, what do you need from me to do that?
Let's not make it so creepy like that.
Oh yeah, wouldn't want to ruin this transactional date with a high schooler at Olive Garden.
So you know, exactly what you'd expect. Between these interactions, though, we see this conversation between Nicole and Jekka.
Wait, you were in contact with Jeffrey in an extracurricular way?
I guess. My mom sort of like, whatever. But it's not like it was just Jeffrey. I saw a few other guys too.
That's like saying I didn't just murder someone, I stole a car too.
Fuck you, you're seeing your teacher.
Yeah, because I get a good grade out of it. What the fuck are you getting?
It's conversation, I guess.
Well, at least we can talk about it. If anyone else knew about this, I'd be on the news.
I wish it was my teacher. The news won't care about me till it's too late.
Which, all things considered, is pretty dark. Nicole suggests Jekka see the school therapist, which they go out of their way to say is a different character than the counselor. In the therapy office, Jekka has a discussion with Miss Ames, the therapist.
Okay, and where exactly is the problem stemming from?
Kinda like everywhere. I'm not attracted to him for one.
Then why would you romantically involve yourself in the first place?
Wow, so it's all about looks? Shallow much?
Ms. Ames tries to get Jekka to open up more about the relationship, but she's very cagey about it and has not revealed that it's with her teacher. She's afraid of saying too much and having everything crash down on her. She's used to being wary of adults who are just trying to help.
If a guy mainly gets off on me acting like a little girl and doing little girl voices, does that mean he'd fuck an actual little girl?
Is that a trick question?
Things move pretty quick from this point. I'm going to play a few long clips back to back with some slight edits for time. I think it's important that you see these parts in context so you understand Ms. Ames's actions and her motivations behind them.
If I don't graduate and go to a school he approves of, he just says I'll end up a whore.
I hope that's an exaggeration.
No, that's about as tame as I can put it.
And what do you think your father would do if he found out about this relationship you're in?
Beat the shit out of me? You're saying he'd help me get out of it?
Possibly.
Knowing his priorities, he'd probably encourage it.
What would his priorities have to do with your dating life?
He'd want me to stay with him so I'd pass history.
I'm sorry?
Oh,
What would your boyfriend have to do with your grade in history?
Fuck!
You're not dating a boy to sneak answers in class, are you? Cheating on tests can lead to expulsion.
I'm dating the teacher!
What?
I'm dating Mr. Cat so I don't fail history.
This is probably not good.
Yeah, but you can't tell anyone, right? Because you can't interfere, because this is my problem. That defeats the point of therapy, right?
Sure, of course.
I have to keep dating him, because if I don't, he's gonna fail me. If I get him next year, he's gonna fail me again. And if I get held back, my GPA is gonna tank, then colleges aren't gonna want me, and my dad's gonna fucking hit me! So I need to do this. I need to act like a little girl for some daddy fetish weirdo, or I'm gonna end up a worthless whore on the side of the road!
I understand this can be very tough. Jekka?
Oh god, you again?
No need to get upset. I just wanted to see how you were doing.
Bitch, you are not helping as much as you think you are.
It's in your best interest to come back and finish our talk. You shouldn't leave like that.
Why? So you can trick me into spilling my life more? I'm not some dumbass Ellen-watching bitch like you!
Let's not bring Ellen into this. You didn't do or say anything wrong.
Really?
Yes, really. Now will you come with me?
I guess.
Good. Okay. Now there's someone I need you to speak with.
What?
Is this her?
What the fuck? You told someone?
You're not in trouble. The officer just has to file a report.
No! No! This ruins everything!
We need to talk about Mr. Katz.
You said you wouldn't tell anybody!
I had to.
Yeah, I guess you had to fuck my future up too, and I'm never passing that class!
Why don't you come with us back into the counseling room?
I'm not telling you shit!
Jekka!
Thank God they're not home. I gotta just tell them before they do. And they're the liars because he heard it from me first. Okay, Dad, someone spread a rumor about me at school and... Fuck, what will come after that?
What the hell are you doing here?
Oh, Dad! Why are you home so early?
The unbelievable phone call I just got! Your principal said you fucked your history teacher!
What?
Is this true?
I didn't fuck him!
Oh my god, you're a whore! I'm gonna beat the shit out of you! Where's the fire poker?
Fuck, I gotta hide somewhere. Would Nicole be home right now? Yes, she skips all the time, of course. Why is it so quiet? Don't tell me she's still at school. Nicole? What the fuck? She did it. No. Oh my god, she left a note. Books, puzzles, and pawns. What do I do now?
Other than that, how's it going with your new classmates?
Same as the old ones.
Is that good?
Was it ever?
Do you experience problems making new friends?
Did you really just ask me if I replaced my dead friend yet?
Do you think you could replace her?
You're making a terrible case for women in the workplace right now.
It wasn't just a turbulent day for you. The entire school was upside down with multiple problematic events. But as they say, life goes on.
For who?
Everyone.
Everyone else.
Her passing was very difficult for you.
What the fuck do you think?
Plenty of people care about you.
Did my math teacher give a shit when Nicole killed herself? Or what about the guys asking me out the day after? 2 or 3 people cared about Nicole. Tops. That's not plenty. No one really cares about me now. Learned that the hard way.
How do you know?
I got molested by my teacher. My friend killed herself. And guess what changed? Absolutely nothing. Flowers and Target gift cards for a week and everything's back to normal. Everyone's back to not caring. No one cares about me because no one considers how my life's gonna be different forever.
It won't be different forever.
Exactly.
It's worth pointing out that in all 3 games, this is the only ending that does not have a scrolling monologue from Nicole or Jekka as a button at the end. It exits directly to the main menu. I think it's left up to you to come up with your own conclusion about what happens next for Jekka. While it's up to interpretation, I think the clear message is that after this, Jekka ends up committing suicide herself. It may be that day, maybe months later. The message is pretty clear though. Jekka opened up to Ms. Ames about her problems, she let her guard down just enough to actually go to an adult for help with an issue she's facing, something that almost never happens in these games. At first, Ms. Ames offers generic, rely on your friends for support advice, which is pretty unhelpful but very expected. After that doesn't get her anywhere, she suggests Jekka ask her dad for help, which is a step beyond unhelpful and closer to actively harmful advice. Feeling trapped, Jekka tells her about the relationship with her teacher in a desperate cry for help. In Jekka's eyes, her trust is met with betrayal when Ms. Ames reports what she's heard and the police get involved. Much worse, we see a call home to Jekka's dad, letting him know that it's time to ethically assault his daughter. In this time where she really needed someone, anyone, she had nobody. Not even Nicole could help her. In the end, Jekka lost everything. This is a perfect parallel to the issue Nicole's having in the flip side of the story in the first game. Nicole is similarly trapped with no recourse. She has a choice to go to her mom or to the counselor as a last resort, and neither even attempt to help her. She's been abandoned by the system and left to her own devices, effectively written off by society. Jekka's situation is largely the same, but with one important distinction: Ms. Ames. Ms. Ames offers some pretty terrible advice and in the end seems to cause Jekka more harm than good, but unlike the other characters in Nicole's story, she's actually trying her best to help Jekka here. This is one of the very few instances in all of these games where an adult truly sees the horrors of the situations these kids are in and does everything in their power to help for the better, to act in these kids' best interest. But it's not enough though. Nicole still dies. Jekka's dad finds out about her relationship with the teacher, and Jekka feels like she can't rely on anybody. So, if Ms. Ames was really trying her best to help, why didn't it work? Why wasn't it enough? Well, as you may have guessed already, once again the game was rigged from the start. Ms. Ames pulled out every tool she had at her disposal. She was a mandatory reporter. She contacted the police. She circulated the news up to the principal to get Mr. Katz out of there instantly. She did everything she was taught was correct and necessary. The trick, though, is that all of these tools were made by the ones in charge of perpetuating this misery. Reporting to the principal meant that she instantly gossiped it to the point where it reached her father. Getting the police involved only caused Jekka to panic because of her terrible previous run-ins with the police.
You shot 5 bullets, so she'll think twice next time?
Her options to help Jekka had no possible outcome other than making everything considerably worse for Jekka in the long run. We're starting to see the consequences of when adults with authority try to break the rules of this society. We'll see an even more practical example of this in a moment. But for now, we've talked so much about the man, the machine, the system. We were in solid understanding of how it works and what its strategies were before, but now we understand what it's for. We know why it exists. It exists in order to keep existing. The gears turn in order to ensure its own protection. The school and all schools in this world exist to perpetuate this system of misery, hate, and dare I say, evil.
I don't believe in anyone being inherently bad.
We have one more ending to talk about, but I'm not exactly sure how to go about it. Purely measuring off of content warning power scaling, it's a pretty benign ending. There's no shock, nothing crazy, not even really any overly crass language. However, I think it's the one that makes the whole game make sense to me. It's one that has a more complicated and elongated path to get to it. In terms of visual novels, I'd say this is the good ending. In terms of this game, I think it's a bit reductive to try to point one out as the good or true ending. If you were to pick one though, this would be it. Despite this, I'm not going to spend much time recapping on this one. This is the ending you get on the other default route we haven't discussed. Whereas our last story was what you got when you were passive and apologetic, this is where you go if you're defiant and stand your ground. Instead of recapping the whole branch, I'm just going to show 2 longer clips back to back. One from the beginning of the route and one from the end. We'll talk about what we just saw after both of them. These are longer than the clips I have been showing, but I think they're both essential to understand the two most important characters in the game.
So, it's been a few months since we moved. How's school going?
Like, academically or socially?
Everything, anything.
Honestly, it's going pretty good.
Oh, that's great to hear. I know moving schools can be hard.
And if I cared, it absolutely would be. But Mom, I figured out that if you just don't engage with other people's emotions or desires, nothing's a burden.
Excuse me?
Like, I'll put it like this. Anytime a guy asks for my company, asks me out, asks for anything, and I make decisions entirely for myself, not concerned with their feelings, there's no stress.
Honey, that sounds a little mean-spirited, don't you think?
Yeah, well, what's the alternative? Being used to do shit? People, especially men, are the perfect pawns when you don't give a fuck about them or whatever they want.
I won't argue. I'll just hope you learn how to interact like a human being when you're a senior.
So you're telling me it's a requirement for women to be pushovers or we're sociopathic? What the fuck happened to feminism, Mom?
Nicole, I don't know any woman who actively considers feminism. We vote and work. It's just a fun thing to say.
Okay, well, fuck feminism. I'm starting Nicoleism.
Nicoleism?
Yeah, the main concept is girls removing all emotional attachment from anyone.
I'm sure you'll meet a nice boy soon and you'll be all over this.
How can I meet a nice boy when all men are just rapists and pedophiles? Is fucking kids nice, Mom?
This conversation is over.
And once again, I can't even begin to describe how proud I am of each and every one of you. Representing your class with a speech, your valedictorian.
Ahem. Thank you, Principal Lin and the rest of the faculty, declaring me the valedictorian for class of '09. Schoolwork was always important to me during my tenure here.
Shut the fuck up!
Anyway, perhaps another among us could put it better. Nicole?
If that's okay.
Nicole, say a few words.
First, I'd like to thank our female authority figure, Miss Lynn, along with her cleavage for symbolizing how the men at this school have treated me here. Like a sex object.
What are you doing?
In my 2 years here, a good 20% of the staff has either asked me on a date or made some other form of sexual advance. I told their supervisors, and they told me to get my grades up.
Are you out of your fucking mind?
I sent my daughter here?
What kind of school is this? I'm calling the news!
Oh, oops. I was just dropping off my lost textbook check. Awkward.
I was on my way out, just packing.
They make you clear the whole room at the end of every year?
No. They make you clear the whole room out after you're fired.
Whoops.
Your apathy won't work on me, Nicole.
You're not mad?
No, actually. It's been a long time coming. Surprised it didn't happen sooner, to be honest.
So you knew ignoring it would come back to bite you?
When you fooled around with half your staff, they don't take you very seriously. I know I might seem old to you, but we're actually not too different.
Using our looks to fuck around with people?
That's right. Been doing it since I was your age. Though you really one-upped me. Never letting your emotions trick you into thinking you owed them anything. Rare for a girl your age.
How long for you to figure that out?
I still haven't. In 39 years. 39 years old, and I didn't report teachers for asking students out because I didn't want to look stuck up. Sometimes all it takes is one night with someone to feel the need to be loyal.
Ew, you fucked the counselor?
Among others.
Well, I guess it only makes sense that men impulsive enough to fuck their boss would also try to fuck kids. I thought you hosted the feminism club.
Politics or fashion. We pick it for a sense of belonging, not change.
Most of us, anyway.
Maybe one day, you'll start your own movement.
I already have.
Seeing this is what made me realize I needed to make this video. To peel back the curtain just a little bit, I played this game on a whim. I think I saw a few TikToks about it. Class of '09 disturbingly out of context. I went into it expecting exactly what's advertised on the tin. Games like Doki Doki Literature Club try to surprise you with their subversion, but Class of '09 wears it on its sleeve. Nobody's getting tricked after hitting the buy button. It's unapologetically silly despite its heavy themes, and although the subject matter is dark, the absurdity of the situations these characters find themselves in is the main vehicle for most of the comedy in the game. It's not funny just because there is a school shooter, it's funny because Nicole is so comedically, bombastically mean that she's able to turn an anime kid into headline news. But then I saw this ending. It was one of the last ones I saw, and it recontextualized Nicole's entire character for me. I thought back through the previous playthroughs I did, and I really thought about how she reacted to different situations she was in. Considering again that all options we're presented with are things that Nicole would be equally as likely to say, I thought about what choices she didn't have. Her conversation with her mom and her conversation with Miss Lynn made me realize that this was not just a funny game with edgy humor. Nicole was a morally consistent character despite the many directions the story goes in. To be more specific, Principal Lynn is what triggered this revelation. In the last branch we looked at, we anointed Nicole's mom as a grim prophecy of Nicole's failure to stand up to the system. She's the product the machine aims to churn out. She shares her mother's fate if she unknowingly plays by the rules of the game. She dies by her own hand if she knowingly rejects the system wholesale. She becomes Principal Lynn by not only accepting the terms of this society, but by trying to take the reins for herself. In their conversation in her office after getting fired, Lynn explains her similarity to Nicole in very plain terms. She understood how the reward systems work in this world. Looks are power and social capital is king. Her investments of that capital put her in a position of power. Her looks and sexual allure kept people in line with her personal agenda. It put her in a safe position in this school. Unfortunately for her, if you short the social market for long enough, your ass is going to get margin called. Her sexual endeavors bought her a place of power, success, and security. But that success was a pair of golden cuffs to the system. The lesson we can take from her is that no one person can beat the house. Lynn was tied down by her personal history. Her social debt to the ones she believed she was keeping in line meant she had no ability to change things for the better. Giving her the benefit of the doubt for a second, I truly believe that in a perfect world, she would have instantly fired the counselor, or the gym teacher, or Mr. White, or kicked out Kyler, or stood up for Jeffrey.
Jeffrey here.
Okay, she probably wouldn't have stood up for Jeffrey, holy shit. The point is, there is no top. There's no puppet master running the game. It's not the government. It's not Miss Lynn. It's not George Soros. It's not Elon Musk. It's everyone. Principal Lynn is the biggest argument the game puts forward for an evil society. And if that's it, then we got some work to do.
Maybe one day, you'll start your own movement.
I think we need to take a break for a second here and define some terms. I think that's important that we're all on the same page taxonomically with what our goals are here. Evil is a concept that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, and I want to make sure you understand it at least the way that I understand it. As with most things, I think it's best to start with a story. It's a Monday morning, and you've woken up much later than normal. Your bedroom is quieter than you're used to for this daily ritual. It starts making sense as you groggily reach for your phone and remember it's a holiday today, so you didn't bother setting an alarm. Scrolling first through your notifications, then your email, then finally your social feeds, you see a story at the top of a local Facebook group in your area. Overnight, a careless person caused a vehicle collision, causing the deaths of multiple people. This driver made it out unscathed. Reports say that the person was under the influence at the time. Instinctually, you forward the article to a friend and immediately see a response. They say, "Yeah, I saw that this morning. What an evil person." Right? In the moment, you may have a hard time knowing whether you agree with this position or not. Let's lay out some basic facts and work through this scenario. Now, while we could spend hours laying out philosophical proofs to set the groundwork of how evil is defined both culturally and ethically, I have way cooler things to do, like smoking cigarettes and spray painting walls. Luckily for us, in his book, Being Evil, A Philosophical Perspective, Luke Russell does the hard work for us. To summarize, in real life, there's no perfect definition that everyone will agree with for what would make an action inherently evil, or even further, what would make a person inherently evil. Instead, Russell puts forward a few definitions that he believes are sufficiently vague as to not leave out too many edge cases, and sufficiently specific to still be a useful tool for philosophical discussions like this. I linked the book in the description because I generally found it pretty interesting. He goes fairly in-depth into testing each definition we'll discuss here, and it's helpful as an introduction to philosophical reasoning if you're new to that sort of thing. I'd recommend you all read it. It's honestly kind of closer to a pamphlet than a book. I read it in one Adderall-fueled evening. To start at the beginning, let's look at his first definition of an evil action. The basic extremity account of evil action. An action is evil if and only if it is extremely wrong. Now, this is an okay start, right? This lays out the concepts that evil things are the things that a sensible person would see as extremely wrong. But how useful is this as a definition? For the most part, all this axiom is doing for us is laundering the heavy lifting of the term evil through the term extremely wrong. What would a sensible person view as an extreme wrong? Smoking cigarettes and spray painting cars? Drunk driving? Drinking at all? Owning a car at all? The vagary on display with this definition ultimately lands us firmly in a gray zone. Unfortunately, the gray zone is for unloading only and not for standing, so we have to move on. Further into the book, after developing and discussing some interesting qualifiers and variant statements, Russell puts this definition forward. The extremely harmful wrongs account of evil actions. An action is evil if and only if it is an extremely harmful wrong action. Now, if you're too much of a computer science major to understand the difference between this and the previous definition, let me highlight that pesky word harmful. In our previous proposed definition, we took issue with the term extremely wrong. This is because the idea of the degree of wrongness is subjective to any individual. This will be an important concept in a few moments. The idea of harm, however, is a little bit easier to quantify. I say a little bit because there's still an element of subjectivity on a micro scale. To share a personal anecdote, I was visiting my sisters for an undisclosed wintertime holiday at their home in Massachusetts. Living so far away from her, I rarely see her or her child, so I'm not used to their idea of what a good time is, while simultaneously, her kids couldn't hold down more than half a pack of Newports. One day, we're sitting in their kitchen while her eldest son is playing with a ball. The game he's developed is one where I throw the ball in the air and he watches as it lands in front of him. This continues for 20 minutes until he decides it's time to watch Cars 2 for the 5th time today. While on the 15th lap of this game, he makes an unprecedented move by attempting to catch the ball, mere seconds after it has stopped moving entirely. All in the room are stunned to have witnessed such an athletic feat, feeling a newfound sense of kinship and bonding between my nephew and I, as if years of rigorous training were in preparation for this very moment. I approached him to give a very light and friendly pat on the back. This was a move that would have disastrous consequences. See, he had not anticipated my interaction and having an equivalent grasp of gravity as an average 2-year-old or an incredibly intelligent 1-year-old. He stumbled forward off of his little sausage-like legs and went face forward onto the hardwood floor. I bring up this story to highlight the differences in how harmful actions can be viewed on the micro scale. To my sisters and I had committed an action that would at worst land me with 1/8 of an extra lump of coal in my stocking. To my nephew, however, I had just enacted upon him the 2-year-old equivalent of a hate crime. When we approach harm as a unit of measurement on a grander scale, especially when used to compare and contrast events, it can become a very useful tool in our journey. A cheating scandal perpetrated by the administration of a school district may be a harmful action to many. However, very few people would argue in good faith that this would be on the same level of harm as, say, Purdue Pharmaceuticals flooding doctors and hospitals with incentives to prescribe OxyContin, triggering the opioid crisis and fueling Ronald Reagan's failed war on drugs. Most would say that's probably the worst one. This definition isn't perfect though, and we can use Purdue as an example as well as our drunk driver from earlier. When we discuss a moral wrong, namely a harmful one, we're often using it as a way to lay blame at an individual or group's feet. Are the accountants at Purdue responsible for the actions of their board of directors or of their sales representatives? Even so, how responsible are their representatives? They presumably have little to no medical training, and it may not be fair to lay the crisis at their feet. Would it then fall to the scientists who developed the drug? Their mission was to create a universal painkiller in the form of a cheap-to-produce opioid. They have no control or desire to see this advertised and prescribed in irresponsible manners. How about our drunk driver? Was it an evil action for the bartender to allow them to drive home that night? What if they weren't at a bar and they got drunk at home? Can we blame the liquor store clerk? The distillery? The car manufacturer for not putting an ignition interlock in all models? This rabbit hole of blame is intentionally annoying to deal with. While some of those questions may have most people shaking their heads, with our definition here, it's hard to say for sure where to lay the blame for these harmful wrongs. Towards the end of the book, Russell provides this final definition for an evil action, which I believe we can use as a starting block for analyzing the actions of Class of '09. The extremely individually harmful culpable wrongs account of evil action. An action is evil if and only if it is a wrong that is extremely harmful for at least one individual victim where the wrongdoer is fully culpable for that harm in its extremity. It's clunky, it's not perfect, and it certainly isn't all that much more specific than our first example. But, assuming this is as good as we're going to get, let's break this apart and see how well it holds up. Our first addition is the claim that this wrong must affect at least one individual victim. This may seem obvious to you, but it's actually a fairly helpful qualifier to rule out the so-called victimless crimes. Surprisingly, we don't have time for a full discussion of whether the very concept of a victimless crime is a legitimate idea. To give a brief summary of this potential discussion we could have on it, let's take a look at this clip from an alternate version of this video where we did have time to talk about it. Is the existence of victimless crimes a legitimate concept? No. Wow, now that was an interesting discussion. I bet you're wishing you were watching that video right now instead. Before you log into TikTok and try reality shifting to a world where I made that video, we have a few more points to talk about with this new definition. The meat of the new additions to this definition are the phrases fully culpable and in its extremity. This skin tag of a qualifier serves to limit the discussion of the action to whoever is the most responsible for most of the harm. To use our drunk driver example, yes, there is a reasonable argument to be made that a bartender serving this person would have a fair amount of responsibility for the action here. However, the harm in its extremity was not reasonably caused by the bartender. In this case, the majority of the harm was caused by one person, the person who decided to get behind the wheel after becoming intoxicated. Like I said, this definition is not perfect by any means, and Luke Russell makes no claims that this is the be-all end-all of definitions either. Just like there could be disagreement on if this is too vague of a definition, some may claim that it's in fact too specific, and our first attempt is the only reasonable way to define an evil action. Some may say that there's no way to define it and that such an effort is pointless. But those people don't have a YouTube channel, and you all have to be nice to me or else I'm gonna tell my mom. So now that we have our criteria out of the way for what evil looks like, we should be good to go ahead and start applying it to what we saw before, right? Well, we could, but remember what our thesis is. We're not here to discuss if the actions made in this game by Nicole and the other characters are evil. We're here to discuss if the society Nicole lives in is evil. And to do that, that's staying in. And to do that, we're gonna have to talk about Eichmann. In 1932, due to the effects of the Great Depression in Germany, a growing dissatisfaction in the voting populace, and anti-Semitic rhetoric coming from homegrown political movements, created a fertile foundation for a right-wing, fascist, totalitarian organization, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or as it would come to be known by, the Nazi Party, which had been growing in membership since 1921 when leadership of the party was taken over by a man by the name of Adolf Hitler. Now, in a video about evil people and evil societies, you may think that it would be obvious to talk about the most evil man to ever live, right? Well, I would love to sit here and talk about how terrible the Nazis were and spew my woke white boy energy on you all. You may be surprised to hear that this isn't the most productive use of our time. Going back to 1932, that was a big year for Nazis. They had finally created a large enough voting bloc with a 38% majority. This influence was huge for the parties, and while some numbers dipped off, the naming of Hitler as chancellor in 1933 was the boon that kept the party in power into the start of World War II. During this 1933 boom, however, a young man named Adolf Eichmann joined the Nazi Party, and in 1934 was swiftly selected to join the SS, the privatized military force of the Nazi Party run by Hitler's second-in-command, Heinrich Himmler. Through his time as an SS officer, he would help found an organization within the party called the Central Office for Jewish Emigration. The goal of this organization was the forced deportation of over 100,000 Jews from their homes in Austria. This office worked with such efficiency that Himmler ordered the creation of a Reich-wide office for deportation of all Jews in Nazi-held territories. Eichmann was chosen to lead this new office. He would serve in this position through the start of the war until joining the Gestapo, Hitler's secret police. Here he would oversee all Jewish affairs for the party until 1941, when he met with various high-ranking Nazis, including Hitler himself. In that meeting, Hitler discussed what he posited as his final solution, a plan which led to the deportation of 1.5 million Jews across Europe. Now, I'm building something here, and we'll get there very soon. But I want to make it very clear that when I say deportation, I mean they were sent to death camps. These were not simply displacements. This was literal decimation of the European Jewish population. 1.5 million civilians senselessly sent to die. Now, I know a silly video about anime girls is not to discuss the atrocities of World War II, and especially the German Holocaust, but please educate yourselves in whatever ways you can about the true scale of the operation run by Adolf Eichmann and the strategies used by Nazis to villainize the Jewish people. There are active campaigns right this second attempting to undermine our knowledge of the severity of this to the point of outright denial of its existence. It's our collective responsibility to not let the memory of this incredibly dark period fade and to fight those who wish to spread misinformation. So okay, why bother talking about any of this? Well, you see, the Nazis lost World War II. And they didn't just lose, they super lost World War II. To the point where for decades we thought to ourselves, man, I bet we'll never see those guys again. The end of the war was explosive in every sense of the word. Most SS leaders would find themselves captured by Allied forces or dying in combat or by their own hand. Many would escape Europe, taking refuge in South America. This was in part thanks to the connections between Francisco Franco, fascist dictator of Spain in post-war Europe, and Nazi sympathizer in the ilk of Benito Mussolini, and Juan Perón, who was, he was in Argentina. This rat-line connection allowed Eichmann to escape US custody in 1946 and take refuge in Argentina, where he laid low behind their uncooperative extradition laws. He stayed there under the radar until he was taken into Israeli captivity in 1960 to stand trial for war crimes in Jerusalem. Which brings us to Hannah Arendt and her book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, A Report on the Banality of Evil, initially printed as a series in the New Yorker magazine before being published in 1963 by Viking Press. Now, this book, it's not perfect. In fact, it has some pretty glaring issues, and we'll touch briefly on them later on, but it's the best starting point to talk about a term we're going to have to get very used to, the banality of evil. This book is a memoir of Hannah Arendt's experiences during the trial of Adolf Eichmann in person as a Jewish woman who herself fled from Nazi Germany. Before his arrest in Argentina, Eichmann was not a very well-known figure outside of the Nazi Party. Overseas readers knew of the big players, but Eichmann was able to largely slip into the background. In his phenomenal biography, Becoming Eichmann, David Cesarani makes a note of a Nuremberg judge penciling, "Who is he?" next to Eichmann's name when it popped up in a piece of evidence. Cesarani makes many points against Arendt in this book, and we'll talk about them in a bit. After his arrest, Eichmann was a news sensation. His trial was covered by publications globally. Just as the world was beginning to ease back into normalcy after the post-war chaos, we had a new villain, a new bad guy from the shadows who might have actually been behind it all along. Well, that's exactly what Hannah Arendt was prepared for when she walked into the Jerusalem courtroom for his trial in 1960. She was prepared to be faced with a mustache-twirling villain. What she saw instead, though, she could only describe as a plain, average-looking bureaucrat. In the following days of the trial, as witness after witness discussed his actions during his time as an SS member, the theme she noted in her book was that his actions, at least to him, were very ordinary. In his own mind, he was not organizing the largest genocide the world had ever seen. He was a logistics manager for what was essentially a large corporation. They had to load people on trains, and those trains had to get somewhere. That was his job, and he did it. In his testimony, Eichmann himself even expressed no hatred of Jews and insisted that he had no knowledge of what Hitler's final solution was. She coins this odd concept as the banality of evil, how evil is not necessarily done by the cartoon villains we grow up hating, but by normal, everyday people. So this is all well and good, and I'm going to talk more about this concept because I do think it has merit, but I need to talk a little bit more about this book, lest I accidentally contribute to the misinformation I talked about earlier. In the modern day, over 60 years after this trial, we have much more knowledge about Eichmann as a person, and more importantly, very specific details about what exactly he did as a part of the SS. To sum it up, the entire conceit of this book is wrong. Eichmann ended up being exactly the mustache-twirling villain we all thought he was. Not only that, but the sheer popularity of this book has inadvertently done a lot of good PR for Eichmann as a brand. Going back to becoming Eichmann, Cesarani makes a good point about how the narrative around not only Adolf Eichmann, but around the entirety of the German Nazi Party had shifted for decades to depict less a horribly racist, fascist, and dare I say evil regime, but rather a large, cold organization filled with mindless bureaucrats, cogs upon cogs upon cogs unthinkingly carrying out orders, that it's impossible to attribute blame to the middle administration of the Nazi Party because they're ultimately blameless. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret here. They still became the fucking Nazis, though. Like before, I'm going to link this book in the description. I think it's an interesting analysis of the economic, political, and cultural climate contemporaneous to Eichmann's career and upbringing. It demonstrates that while not fully detached from the atrocities like Arendt claims, he is emblematic about how anyone could have become an Eichmann. But why not everyone did? So where does that leave us with the banality of evil? Well, in 2025, our understanding of the term has shifted a bit away from little Eichmanns and more towards transparent and systemic cruelty. A banal evil as we know it today is less about individuals doing harm and their culpability, but rather the lasting effects that centuries of human progress can have on an entire society, or even just on a small part of one. In the early 20th century, local lawmakers nationwide coordinated to limit access to critical services in neighborhoods with high concentrations of minorities. These restricted services included transportation, healthcare, police, fire, and telecom. Parallel to this, newly created credit ratings gave lenders and realtors a documented method of denying mortgages and financial services to those who lived in these neighborhoods. This compounded with the other redlining practices to metaphorically wall off these neighborhoods from the rest of the cities they resided in.
And in some cases, literally walled off. Behind me is what remains of the Inner Loop Highway in Rochester, New York. Rochester is currently considered to be in the top 50% of segregated cities with a rating from Berkeley of high segregation. The Inner Loop was a local highway created in the 50s with an express purpose of relieving traffic in the downtown area. The idea was to create a recessed highway similar to the ones in other cities that would fully encircle Rochester, separating it from its first ring of suburbs. This worked to decrease traffic in Midtown, but exacerbated the effects we outlined with redlining. These were made worse, though, by not only denying services to the neighborhoods affected, but also by restricting their ability to even leave the city. When it was in full operation, there were only 4 crossings in the entire city to get over the inner loop. If you didn't have a car, you were walking, since the buses at the time were not scheduled to cross the highway on any convenient schedule. And if you weren't lucky to live near a crossing, that's a long walk. In the decades making up the latter part of the century, the 490, 390, and 590 interstates were completed. These highways bypassed the city for the most part and provided suburbanites with easier access to each other than the inner loop could provide, leaving it unused. Because of this drop in downtown traffic, the state approved funding to start filling in the inner loop section by section 20 years ago. With each part filled in, the surrounding neighborhoods on both sides have been seeing huge economic growth with new commercial and residential development. The mile-long stretch you see behind me is the only remaining section of the inner loop, and efforts are currently underway to acquire funding to close this last part, hopefully putting an end to a major contributor to more than 70 years of segregation and systemic oppression.
So why did I just spend 2 minutes talking about a highway?
I mean, have you driven on it?
For real though, the inner loop is a concrete rebar and tar example of the manifestation of this banal evil. The highway was never celebrated as a tool for oppression when it was made. It was a bypass to keep suburban commuters away from Midtown Mall during rush hour. The highway wasn't made with the intention to create a food desert. That was due to local legislatures failing to keep supermarkets like Tops and Wegmans from shutting down their inner city stores over reported low profits. And the highway never killed people. It just...
Well, okay, it did kill a lot of people, but not in like a racist way.
The point I'm making is that for all the problems caused by the inner loop, at the end of the day, it's just a highway. The planning for it was done in public, mundane meetings. The funding was approved by the state, and the people who saw all this coming already had their voices squashed by other equally dull-sounding, yet equally harmful policies. This is a banal evil, the parts of our daily lives that hide in plain sight. The contract clauses that screwed you out of your bonus, the insurance companies that use AI to automatically reject claims, the tax codes limiting how much teachers can write off for school supplies while allowing Warner Brothers to write off hundreds of millions because they decided to scrap a fully filmed movie. Okay, I promise we're almost done with the book report and civics lesson. We just need to wrap some things up definition-wise. We have our definition of an evil action and we have our understanding of the banality of evil. Now we just need to use that understanding to come up with our criteria for an evil society. Luke Russell makes comments on how a society could be evil, but doesn't make any specific definition for that situation. Instead, he offers his criteria for evil personhood. Skipping the beta testing we did with the earlier definitions, we'll look at his final positive definition for evil personhood. The fixed dispositional account of evil personhood. You are an evil person if and only if you are strongly disposed to perform evil actions, and this disposition is now so firmly fixed that you ought to be treated as a write-off. So that's a lot to take in. We can talk about my personal beliefs about evil personhood after towards the end, but this is our best workable definition for now. Breaking it apart, there's 2 main thoughts in this sentence. The first is that a person is strongly predisposed to perform an evil action. If presented with the opportunity, they will more often pick the evil action rather than not. The second part builds off of that to say that this disposition is unignorable and incurable, meaning that a good-natured person should not attempt to engage with an evil person in any capacity. Under this definition, we are to forego any intervention or rehabilitation, and instead focus on limiting damage and exposure to these people. This definition will be very useful when talking about our characters, but we can go one step further. Using the knowledge we have, I propose this as a definition for an evil society. The mass disproportional account of evil societies. A society can be considered evil if and only if a non-predisposed as evil person is more likely than not to become predisposed for evil after sufficient exposure to the society. This definition kind of sucks, but that's because I'm not a philosopher. I'm some guy with a keyboard and an Adderall prescription. My definition for an evil society follows the same line of thought as our definition of evil personhood, whereas instead of deciding whether a person should be viewed as a lost cause, this definition can be used to measure whether a generally born good person will be more likely than not converted into having an evil disposition. Much like Eichmann in pre-war Austria, most of us are born as normal, everyday people. And much like Arendt says in her book, the world is full of little Eichmanns. Just maybe not in the way she thought.
Are we bad people?
I don't know.
Class of '09 makes an argument for the existence of an evil society. Through the characterization of the secondary characters and Nicole's own monologue, the game explores the concept of evil as a character trait, both of the individual and of society, the corruptible nature of man, and the banality and insidious nature of evil. And I disagree with its conclusion, at least as it applies to the real world. I believe that not only is there no such thing as an evil society, but that there's no such thing as an evil person, and that this line of thinking is ultimately harmful for the success of human civilization in the future. Truth be told, my understanding on ethics and morality is certifiably sophomoric, and I've used this project largely as a way to educate myself before passing on what I've learned to you all. That being said, I believe that every person has personal fundamental truths in themselves, which are so ingrained as a part of their personality that they're unlikely to change through someone's lifetimes. Opinions and takes are fleeting, and a person who never changes their mind about anything would be incredibly frustrating to talk about. But these fundamental truths stay with you, and to change or question them would require deep introspection, copious mind-altering substances, or one bad girlfriend. I myself have many of these fundamental truths that I hold close to me and reflect on regularly. Specifically for this discussion, I think about my seventh truth. Evil is not an inherent quality in any person. I considered this seventh truth many times throughout my playthroughs of Class of '09. At the risk of bringing people back to their 10th grade ethics class, I'd like to bring you back to my 10th grade ethics class and talk a little bit about the concept of the social contract. To live as a successful and productive member of a society, there are two sets of rules one must follow. The first set of rules is legislative, the rules of the land which your local government enforces through your penal system. These are called laws, and you shouldn't break them unless it's for a really good joke. These laws govern the hard rules that are the bare minimum to live in a society. Violation of these laws results in either disincentives through punishments like fines and community service, or the removal of oneself via jail time, or potentially death. For now, I'm more interested in this second set of rules that govern society, the proverbial recommended specifications to our legal system's minimum system requirements. In a modern, civilized society, there's a sort of unwritten rule book, one whose violation won't put you in jail or on any wanted list, but instead one whose rules form the bedrock of how a person ought to behave. These are a society's ethical code. We also refer to it using the term social contract, which was coined over 20 years ago by Enlightenment-era philosophers like Rousseau, Hobbes, and Locke. Now, this is likely information that you already know, but I think it's worth the refresher for two reasons. Firstly, as you've potentially already surmised, the concept of a person so naturally evil that they exist beyond salvation has heavy implications for our current day interpretation of the social contract and how it relates to our legal system. Secondly, YouTube's algorithms currently favoring sustained watch times and repeat viewing, so longer videos are pushed to more people. These two systems, one legal and one social, both serve separate, distinct, and important functions in our modern society. However, adding the idea that an individual can be marked as irredeemably evil into this ever-evolving contract marks a violation of this distinction. It creates an overlap where a declaration made due to a violation on the social contract can trigger penalties reserved for those who commit violations of our legal code. A legal solution for an ethical problem. This may seem like a non-issue. After all, while they are separate codes, many laws are inspired by ethics, and the idea of what is and is not okay in an ethical sense changes with the zeitgeist of the contemporary populace. However, that in itself is kind of the problem here, right? By using flexible and sometimes subjective nature of what is and is not ethical in society, we can use these moral diagnoses to benefit those in power by saying an evil person is whoever we want. We spent nearly 30 minutes trying to drill down a definition of what an evil action even was, and there will still probably be people in the comments disagreeing and putting their own definitions forward. How can we trust as a society that the ones identifying the evil among us have good intentions? Even if their intentions are good, how can we trust that they're not wrong? How can we make sure that they're actually getting the evil ones right? The answer is we can't. There's no way for us to take a vial of blood, stick it in a machine, and get a notarized certificate with our generalized evilness index, no matter how much money we throw at Theranos. It's no coincidence that the concept of whether a person can be considered evil at heart as a violation of our social contract and the death penalty can appear in the same handful of breaths. This argument is at the very core of the capital punishment debate, and is one that thankfully we will not be addressing in any deep capacity. Neither you nor I are truly prepared to have that tedious of a conversation at this moment, and like I said, I have much cooler things to do right now than to tell you that the death penalty serves as both a penal scapegoat for an unfair and biased judicial system and as a bargaining tool for unproductive legislators to endlessly argue over instead of actually fixing issues that matter to their constituents. But that's the real world, and I can say whatever I want about the real world because it's my channel, and you all said you'd be nice to me earlier. What about the game, though? It provides an exaggerated but somewhat reasonable caricature of this sort of micro-level society via this fictional high school. With our definitions of evil that we came up with, can we at least say if this fake society is evil or not? Well, in short, yes, we can decide definitively if this example fits our definition. Before we do, though, we'll need to revisit our roster of characters from earlier in the video. If we can determine that these characters are irredeemably predisposed towards evil deeds, then that gives this theory some solid legs to stand on. Kyler is an impressionable young man with uncontrolled and mistreated anger issues. He self-medicates with drugs to manage chronic pain, but has no tools at his disposal to handle his emotional pain and frustration. When in a calm environment, he's a very simple person with very simple goals. He views his masculinity as a very important part of his character and views any challenge to that as a personal threat. It's a system of beliefs that was passed down to him from his father. He copes with frustrations through unproductive means, such as bullying, harassment, destruction of property, and grand, reckless gestures. This lack of coping mechanisms affects his critical thinking skills, leaving him vulnerable to peer pressure and abuse from those in power. He's quick to join into Mr. White's party once it becomes cool to do so, and he's willing to believe the lies told by the gym teacher when Nicole slights him at the concert. He buys into gossip about others easily because he views negative attention towards others equivalently to positive attention towards him. He's a dumb jock, a relentless bully, a mental health emergency, an opioid victim, but I couldn't call him evil. A kid with anger issues is just that, a kid with anger issues. Having shitty parents does not make you an evil person. Jekka is a popular girl who generally tries to do what she believes is the right thing. Interestingly, we haven't talked much about her here. There's a lot to say about her character, especially considering the events from her perspective in the flip side. For context, I'm writing this section last, and I'm realizing that choosing the endings I did was kind of a character assassination for her, which was not my intent. Throughout both games, we see Jekka call out Nicole on the terrible things she does regularly. In the interest of fairness, I'd like to play one clip slightly out of context as a token of goodwill for my girl Jekka. This is an ending from the re-up where Nicole goes to prison for selling freebased crack cocaine to pregnant women in the county next to her. She did this in an attempt to get out of her required community service project for school, and because she found a brick of coke that someone dropped. This is a part of a conversation that happens between Nicole and Jekka when she's visiting Nicole in prison.
I guess 50 was right.
Right about what?
Is get rich or die trying. I did what I had to.
You're white.
What?
You're white, Nicole. You didn't have to do anything.
That's what you think.
What I know is we live in cul-de-sacs, and you don't have to sell crack when you live in a cul-de-sac.
I didn't even totally mean financially. Like, my parents were mean to me and shit. It, makes you make bad decisions.
You sold crack to a pregnant woman because your mom was mean to you?
I think we can say Jekka is one of the invisible victims in this world. While people like Jeffrey will be punished and tormented in visible ways, Jekka will have an almost opposite problem. Much like Nicole's mom, she's on track to be another product of the machine, ripe to feed the next generation in and mold them the way Nicole's mom tries to mold her. She's good-natured, but we don't really see that she's capable of standing up to the true powers at play in the way Nicole is. In fact, she's even incapable of standing up to Nicole herself. Keep that last part in the back of your mind for a second until we talk about Nicole. Because of this lack of agency, I have a hard time saying she's predisposed to do anything. She's so utterly helpless to the whims of the world that she simply does whatever she's directed to. This isn't evil, this is abusive. Jeffrey and Nicole are two sides of the same coin. Like I said way back in the introduction, they're both aware of the systems at play around them. They know the rules and hope to use them in different ways to their advantage. Jeffrey, maybe naively, believes that his hard work and his academics will lead him to success in the future. He's willing to abide by the rules of the system because he believes that it will work to provide him a place of security, like we saw with Principal Lin. Except instead of trying to take control and bend the rules to fit his goals, Jeffrey believes that the work and faith he puts into the system will reward him in the long run altruistically. He believes that there's an inherent fairness to the world and that ultimately he'll have his reward. This nearly religious faith in the world's social contract comes to a head when Nicole breaks the rules in what he sees as a major way. Her publicly humiliating him with no repercussions triggers a they live glasses off moment for him. He's made clearly aware that the rules and system that he has faith in will not protect him, and the abuse perpetrated by Miss Lin confirms that for him, that there is no security in the bounds of the game. There will always be Nicoles who can break the rules and rip your world out from under you. This is a mental break from reality that causes him to rebel in the only way he understands how to. He puts up his first and last rebellion against this wicked world in a way that takes them all with him. I wouldn't say he's evil for this though. Again, looking at our definition of how we're classifying an evil person, our man here would need to be strongly predisposed for evil actions. He has to be more likely than not to commit these evil deeds. In real life, we aren't able to weigh alternate possibilities with any amount of seriousness. We can't look at tragedies and say, well, what if that one person was nicer? With this game, though, we're afforded exactly that luxury. To get Jeffrey to shoot up the school, you have to pick a very exact sequence of choices, which gives you multiple chances to escape out and not cause this to happen. Jeffrey isn't without fault in the rest of the game. He has some pretty shitty beliefs and opinion about women, and he does some other pretty questionable things in alternate branches we didn't cover, but I don't think the game can make a strong enough case for him being predisposed for evil. Nicole is a self-proclaimed sociopath, and after seeing everything she's capable of, I'm kind of inclined to believe her. She's the only character we see who makes any substantial attempt to change the status quo of her environment for the better. Unfortunately though, the forces of society still get the better of her, which forces her in negative directions. Nicole's mother tries to push her to be more accepting of the things she sees as intolerable, and to placate the needs of those she sees as beneath her. This is all done to her own detriment. Her mom pushes her to be another pawn of the system. We've seen her cause a school shooting, expose widespread corruption, unknowingly instigate a white nationalism movement, and even die. In all paths, she understands the way the game is played. We just choose what she does with the information. Similarly to Jeffrey, we're able to see all possibilities of what Nicole would and would not consider. What are the options that she would even consider possible for her to say, and what options are missing entirely? Looking at it as a whole though, much like what we saw with Jeffrey, there are far fewer cases where Nicole is performing what we would define as an evil action than when she chooses not to. In fact, there are many cases where evil actions were easily within reach, but she doesn't even consider it as an option. Nicole could have very easily decided to join the White Pride Party. In the re-up, there's a scenario involving Nicole and Jekka preventing a hate crime. Nicole could easily do nothing in that scenario, leading to yet another one of her classmates dying, but she doesn't even consider it as an option, even when the ultimate outcome of such an action would bring her some degree of benefit. She can be evil, but she can also be, well, good is a stretch, but certainly not evil. Ultimately, though, the options we're giving are too broad to certifiably call her evil. We have one last-minute addition to our lineup here. Like I said before, if there's one character that the game puts forward as an example of evil being an intrinsic quality, it's Principal Lin. Principal Lin is the worst. There's not much you can really say to get around that. In every scene we have with her, she's demonstrating her inability to do the right thing. She fails to control predatory staff. She refuses to step in and prevent a racist hate group from taking over the school. She actively contributes to a bullying campaign on a borderline student, which leads to a school shooting. There's almost no redemption for her character at all. Almost none. To be perfectly honest, there's a not so small part of me that wants to go back on my message here and say, yep, we got one. She's evil, guys. Go nuts on her. But I'm not comfortable coming to that conclusion here. Like, yes, this is fiction, and within the definitions we came up with, it's perfectly reasonable to say a cartoonishly bad person like this can be called an evil person without advocating for its use in real society. But I just spent God knows how long talking about these people within our real-world lens of morality. I've criticized their social structures in terms of enforcing immorality in ways scarily similar to the ones we see in many high schools in our world. This is a game, and this is literally a cartoon character. But she's also kind of real, right? She makes terrible decisions and covers up abhorrent abuses of power and position. But why is she doing it? Let's go back to the Nicoleism ending one more time. Nicole and Lynn are in her office, and as she's getting kicked out, she explains in very plain terms how she got in the position we see her in. If you only play this one branch, you won't necessarily know the further context, but in most other branches, there is a scene with Lynn and Nicole where she explains the various pieces of leverage that pretty much every named faculty member has over her. She's sleeping with the counselor, the gym coach could get her fired, or worse with his connections, Mr. White has nude photos of her, the list goes on.
Can we see the pictures?
Get out of my office.
This combined with what she says in her office with Nicole paints a better picture of what's going on here. As I said before, I do think she wants to do better. She wants to fight for things she believes in like Nicole does. She can't though, because as much as she thinks she's in control, she's just another pawn scared of giving up her place of security. Instead of directing change like she hopes she would, she has become a slightly bigger mouthpiece for this mechanical slime with slightly heavier chains. In this capacity, I have a hard time considering her to be an evil character. Everything she does could be classified as an extreme wrong, but I don't feel like she fits the requirements of culpability here. I think this is inaction under duress, sometimes because of literal blackmail, and sometimes just out of the fear of vague consequences such actions would entail. She's a stone-cold bitch, and I hate her, but she's not an evil person. So, now we have the big question. Does the society presented in Class of 09 qualify under our definition of evil? Unfortunately, I think it does. Looking at it objectively, in relation to our definition, I think it's impossible to look at the evidence and say anything different. However, there's a second and equally as important question we have to ask. Are these characters evil? Like I said in their individual sections, no, I don't think they are. Now that sounds like a contradiction, I know, but it starts making sense when you look at the big picture. No matter what branch you choose, something evil always does happen to someone whether they deserve it or not. These actions are perpetuated by the rules of society. But as we saw before, none of the characters are necessarily always predisposed to evil. Like we said earlier, Jekka's inability to stand up to Nicole mirrors her inability to stand up to the negative forces in the rest of this world. This doesn't make Nicole evil per se, but shows how she acts as a catalyst for these evil morals. By gaming the system, she's not only making things better for herself, but she's using these harmful rules as tools to push those around her in negative directions. Were Nicole to not exist, individual cases like Jekka would be better off, but the problems of the school itself would largely be the same. For example, Mr. White would always have found a student to start his Nazi shit with. No matter what, this movement would have turned out exactly the same way without Nicole's interactions. The points of power in the school are omnipresent forces enabling the misery for these characters. No matter what the starting scenario is, they will always act to make sure the establishment comes out on top, and it always does. Now, earlier I said that we have no way of knowing what the writer's intentions were for making the story. But since writing that segment, we actually do have some insight into this. All three games have special Easter eggs for completion. I won't go into them in deep detail, but I do want to look at a note that was included in the flip side from Max himself, which gives some insight into the perspective he went in with when writing these games. I actually reached out to Max earlier last year for an interview about Class of '09, but I never got a response back. I can only imagine that he was so nervous to talk to me about this that he offered this note instead as an alternative to a full interview and as an apology for not responding. So I just want to take a moment out at the end here to say, Max, I accept your apology, and I appreciate your letter addressed directly to me. In the message, he talks about how a lot of the stories we see in the game were inspired by events that truly happened to him. Obviously, some are going to be fantastical, but according to him, you'd be surprised by which ones are based on reality. This message sums up what I want you all to get from this incredibly long discussion about these games. We're all pretty fucked up people in our own ways. In each of our lives, we've done things that we're not proud of. Maybe these things could be considered evil, maybe it's not that serious. But games like this allow us to point the mirror back at ourselves. These creatures we see through the games are deeply, deeply broken. They're capable of extreme cruelty and malice that we ourselves may find impossible to relate to. But then on the other hand, it's also incredibly relatable. Everyone's experienced unnecessary cruelty from others they went to school with, and likely have been the source of that cruelty for someone else. They've been the victims of an uncaring administration that allows horrible things to pass with no recourse for the victims. In his letter, Max says the following about his audience. Representation in media is important. However, mainstream media cannot represent those they are disconnected from. If you're suicidal, homeless, bulimic, addicted, a sex worker, or in an abusive relationship, Class of '09 is not shock humor to you. It merely displays a reality the comfortable can't comprehend. Class of '09 helps us understand that despite what we've done, whether it is necessary to survive or not, none of us are broken beyond repair. None of us are truly evil, despite what our society says about us.
Dead cells. Every day I'm leaving my dead self, but it's scraping the edge of a barrel, bleeding these dead cells. Too stoned to drive to see your sister in Waterloo. Knuckles white, blue and red in my rear view. I think I'm gonna need some help.
Pop punk's for boring suburban kids who want to live in LA.